contact already. The number 3 goes sideways fire into the wall. And he's already bounced off the side of the car next to him. I'm not sure if they just wobbled.
In North American motorsports, one track has been a staple on the road racing scene, Watkins Glen. Naturally, the Trans Am Racing Challenge couldn't pass up including this legendary circuit on the schedule. Who can master this roller coaster ride of a track? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch the New York 250, and you'll see it all live here on Genesis Extreme. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Rouse Racing driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes, our director, Daniel Costello. Joey, I recently got to revisit this track after a long time away, but I understand this is one of your favorites, and I think it's going to be a wild one in these cars.
Watkins Glen, I think, is at the top of the board for a lot of drivers who visited it. One of the things that I love about it is it's so fast, and this layout is even faster because remember, we're not doing that inner loop, the bus stop, the chicane at the top of the hill, whatever you want to call it. So it is hammer down from turn 2 up through the S's all the way up through that back straightaway as we get a chance to look at this calendar and all of the different tracks that these cars and drivers have been to so far.
Yeah, just this one and one more to go at Sonoma. That is it. Then the season is over at quite a who's who list of classic tracks here in North America. But Watkins Glen taking place today, again, without that inner loop. So it is all fast sweepers throughout the lap. Very few slow corners the drivers will have to deal with during this quite a long race here today. And from what I understand, we've also got the championship order for this series. Now, this is just this one and one more to go. So that means you have very little chance to try and bounce back if you have a bad day today. Siemenchich currently leading ahead of Matt Wright and Devin Brown. But Siemenchich has been hard to beat. Matt Wright has been very, very fast. It's Reese Gardner, though, his fellow Aussie, that is often well above the rest of the field. He's down in 5th because he's had some bad races where he didn't see that checkered flag, and he's been playing catch up since. What can he do to claw that back in these last 2 races of the season is the big question on this one. So as we check out the AM standings as well, Joey, looks like Bavenbeck is the one that holds the hand over everyone else.
Yeah, currently leading the way in those AM standings, and just let you know, they are in the same types of cars out here. It's not like the pros are in a faster car and the AMs are in a slower car. They're all racing the same cars, just a little bit of a different order in terms of the driver ratings. Chris Gordon is currently 2nd in that AM championship. Mike Mallon 3rd. Mark Johnson sitting in that 4th place. Mafanui Fleur is actually tied for 4th place, and he had actually a fantastic run just the last time out. So let's keep an eye on Fleur there. And then also Filippo Marazzi, Bruno Chacon, Steve Carmen, John D, and Paul Starsov there in 9th place.
That, of course, takes us to our starting grid for today's event as well. Not going to be as important as it is definitely possible to pass. Reese Gardner, no surprises. He is going to be on the pole. Pedersen, Siemenchich, and Kirsten rounding out your top 4 for this race. Then we get on to the next couple rows. Celadon will lead Matt Wright, and Riley Wyans and Daniel Herlock-Bowe are going to be rounding out your top 8. You get to the next few. Bavenbeck going to be starting in 9th with Johnson in P10. The Rally INT driver of DeVos starting 11th. And Chris Gordon, his teammate, in that number 88, starting alongside. Declan Brush will be starting 13th. Mallon in P14. Fleur, she's put that Fish Motorsports car up into 15th. Steph Hermans in the 16th spot. That's then followed up by Ryan, Purchase, Starzov, and Marazzi for our 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th positions for today's race. And from there, it is off to the races quite literally here in just a moment. Kind of curious what it's going to look like around these corners with these old tires here, Joey. Your favorite talking point, the tires. I have to imagine trying to hold on to them could be relatively important.
It's definitely a trigger word for me. And you're right. I think that from what we've seen in races past, this racetrack in specific will probably be the highest tire wear, highest tire degradation, and it's just coupled down to the speeds. Coming up through the S's just to start the lap, there's tons of load going through the car and a lot of speed as well. Going through the outer loop, once again, tons of load and temperature on those outside left side tires. And then through the boot section, it is once again just heavy load on the car. So if we're going to be getting technical and talking about tire wear, I think that this racetrack is going to throw the drivers for something they haven't seen yet this season.
All right, I believe the cars are gridding up, so we should see them getting going racing pretty quickly here. Like I said, actually got a chance to go back to the real track. It had been 25 years since I had last been there. Got to call a real race there recently, and it still looks as beautiful and an impressive as ever. Something that I don't think is talked about enough about this track, Joey, is the absolutely jaw-dropping elevation change that happens around it.
And it really, it's from start finish. It goes extreme downhill into turn number one. That can catch a lot of drivers maybe by surprise because you think about turn one as a great passing opportunity, which it is, but you have to be so careful on that brake marker. If you go just even a little bit too deep, that gravity will just help pull you down the hill. It seems like you can't stop it all. Lots of lockups happen. Lots of incidents happen at Apex, but then not only turn one going downhill, turn two right back up the hill. Once you get out to that boot section and the outer loop there, once again, all the way downhill. I mentioned the speeds at this racetrack, but there's also the compression factor. There's the added banking factor in the boot down there. So I just think that these drivers and these cars are in for a really, really fun race today.
Riding on board with Jerzy Siemanczyk to see his perspective. Obviously, we've got a lot of different styles of car also racing here. One of our Firebirds is Pontiac going to try and see if he can move himself up the front past that Cuda, which sits on the pole. And love all the different variety of classic Trans Am cars that they've got sort of pitted against one another. Just one more point on the elevation change here. The other thing that I feel like is kind of unique is a lot of tracks that you see dramatic elevation change, they tend to be kind of in a bowl so that spectators will have viewing areas to watch from. This is the complete reverse. It's up on the top of a hill. When you get up to some of the highest points of the track and you're not surrounded by trees, you can see for miles around.
And really right here is probably the highest point on the track. There we see the inner loop, the chicane that we are not using today. So drivers will keep their foot to the floor through that section, and there is a little bit of a pavement change going through there as the inner loop reconnects with the outside part of the racetrack, and it feeds into the braking zone, especially with how fast these cars are going. So drivers have to be careful. I mentioned turn one going downhill, but even just over the crest going into the outer loop can be a little bit tricky.
Can see lap 1 of 76. It'll obviously be 75 laps since they will count this first lap as one of those 76. But from there, unleashed and ready to go. No full course yellows in this series, so you have to try and manage your pace, manage those tires, and hope that you don't run into trouble because there's nothing that's going to bunch everybody back up to you and give you that chance to kind of recapture what you may have lost. This is over the sole of the boot, up into the braking of the heel. And that will return them back onto the main circuit here in just a corner in some change on the lap. That 94 that you see, that green and yellow, that is Reese Gardner. That is the driver that has been just a leg above many of his competitors recently, but last round was a bit of a different circuit from what we saw here. We'll see, Joey, if he can carry on that pace to a long, fast-flowing track.
And just to kind of give a little bit of a brief history, Reese was way out in front in Lime Rock, and then unfortunately pit stop strategy put him in the middle of the pack, and he got collected, taken out. So he's been the fastest car for the past few races, Just luck hasn't always been on his side.
Okay, will the rub of the green be with him, or is it just waving of the green? First, we get that latter half of it. They're coming up to the stands, and he goes immediately. Green flag is out. There was a bit of a checkup or something there, but just behind cars, almost getting shoved into the inside wall there on the third row. Thankfully, it looks like that did not create an accident. But as they now come through the 90 and down towards the S's for the first time in anger, it does look like Gardner will hold on to the lead.
I loved what I saw in turn one. Plenty of space given, and now big time power slides from Riley Wyans and company as we go up through the S's the first time. Look at him just hang the tail end of these cars out. Gotta remember, 500 horsepower or so in these things and some old school tires. It is fun to watch.
Pedersen still holding on to that second place. They're trying to run away from Siemenchich, who honestly probably just needs to collect some points here in these last couple rounds. I don't think he necessarily needs to win these races. The 124 as well of DeVos trying to see if he can be on the attack. Oh, behind them, big accident coming down to the chute. He's going to fly across the track. Fleur somehow avoids being run into. I think that is the 29 of Mallon with massive damage to the left-hand side of the car.
Yeah, and I'm really oh, and there's some more side-to-side contact. That involves the 124, Robert DeVos, and now he's also spun around. A third car is going to get collected. Chaos and calamity here happening at Watkins Glen on the opening lap.
Absolutely disastrous for DeVos. Oh, but Gardner's already under attack. Pedersen tries to get the nose down to the inside of turn 9. That's a difficult place to try and make a pass. As we hop on board, he squirms under power, can't quite get the job done.
What we've seen typically is that cars have their strong suits. Some of them are a little bit faster in the turns, some of them a little bit faster down the straightaways, and one thing's for sure, that green and gold number 94 on the straight, he's tough to catch.
Absolutely, but it's a big, heavy car. The Firebird maybe just a little bit smaller and more nimble in comparison. Will that help him through that boot section repeatedly? And that is Wyans, who is out of this race and didn't even get to complete one lap.
Yeah, racing, it can be a rather cruel mother sometimes, and sometimes it's rather nice, and you get to go out there and play with your buddies as we watch Matt Wright, another one of these members of the CUDA crew. He's in this orange Barracuda, currently chasing Kirsten there, and he's gonna look to the inside. No, gonna fade back to the outside as defensive goes the Mustang right in the middle of the racetrack. This is always tough in the outer loop to go the long way around. The corner is just so dang long. It's tough to hold the momentum.
Something these cars didn't have to deal with back in their era is they have that paved runoff, as that was a slide from the 49 of Wright. He's going to manage to get to the inside of Kirsten. Still hasn't quite got past him, but they have all this paved runoff, with this being the modern version of it, and the sim is policing track limits, so they can't just kind of dive off and take that runoff whenever they please.
This could also be another situation of just the cars making the speed at the different areas of the racetrack. And we saw that the Firebird earlier was all over the back of Gardner. I wonder if it's just kind of the same situation with Nicholas Kirsten and Matt Wright back there with that CUDA so fast going up the uphill. Then once they got to the boot section, it seemed like that Ford Mustang had a little bit of an edge up.
Yeah, and that's another smaller car, that Ford Mustang, so that doesn't surprise me too much, with it being a lot less long straights there in the boot section. Maybe we'll see that car shine, and if it can hold on to its tires a little better, maybe late in the race they'll be more of a threat.
Looking at the lap times as they go by, they are continuing to get faster as Matt Wright, he's trying to still find a way by this kind of cream and red colored Ford Mustang Boss 302. And if there's going to be a strong suit for that orange Barracuda, it's going to be through turn 2, 3, and 4 up here as we climb up the S's. Really use that big motor, use all that horsepower, try to get in the slipstream, and sure enough, he's going to have an opportunity. Look at how close he's already got it. It's going to be side by side before we even get to the inner loop.
footage to the floor, and that engine is roaring down the back straight. This time, though, he's got the inside, and he's fully ahead. That's going to move right up into the third position and onto the podium. Wright is the one chasing on Siemenchich, so he definitely has motivation to try and get by because he's already lost touch with the third-place driver by about 4.4 seconds, it looks like.
It was pretty impressive, the gap that Reese Gardner was able to pull out at Portland International Raceway just a race ago. And I think that Matt Wright did a terrific job to kind of prove that the CUDA wasn't just a fluke with Reese up there. And I'm wondering, now that he's got some clean air, he's freed up from Nicholas Kirsten in that Ford Mustang, if he can actually go and catch those two Firebirds in front, as Nicholas Kirsten has some more company in the form of David Baca-Celadon. That's that green number 4 Dodge Challenger.
Yeah, he's going to want to try and pick this up as well, but it wasn't close enough while they were tussling, so now he's got to try and do it on his own. That said, he's also got Herlock Bow practically breathing down his neck here, actually. That Mustang looking mighty close as they complete another lap, and look at them absolutely slide through the final turn. Don't want to let that tail wag out too far because the barrier is right at the edge of the track.
We haven't talked too much about pit stop strategy, but we did mention the tire wear, the potential tire wear that they could be going on, and I have a feeling they go hand in hand here, because if you've got a driver that's more abusive of the tires, they're going to be hitting pit road quite early, and this is too early. I have a feeling that there might have been a problem here for this number 88.
I think he may have been a part of that big accident we saw at the start, so that may be involved. And I saw smoke coming out of Herlock Bow's machine. I wonder if he had a money shift there, because the car doesn't look like it's in good shape as they now get off the throttle, coming down through the outer loop. The 4 did manage to get by and move into 5th.
Now we dive down the hill here into the boot section. Both of those Ford Mustangs a little bit more neat and tidy on the apex there, as come to the lowest part of the circuit here at Watkins Glen. Drive the car into this corner here, the toe of the boot, and then just kind of stand on the gas as much as you can, work the wheel, and let the car just kind of drift up and away. Just have fun here at Watkins Glen. I think that boot section is a ton of fun to drive, especially with that elevation you were talking about earlier.
That's Starsov's, I think, fighting for one of the lower spots down in 18th. They're the last 2 that are still running now that Wyans is our first DNF. But we jump back to our leaders, already up to 5.7 seconds over Matt Wright and extending. They seem to have quite a bit of pace over everybody else, but Gardner doesn't have enough pace to get rid of the 17 and the 917.
And this is, I think, crucial for both of those Firebirds, because if you can stay with the leader in terms of lap time, it puts you on the exact same page in terms of strategy. It also opens up the door for a potential undercut or overcut, depending on how the tires have fallen off and what the kind of grip level is. I think that these two teammates doing a fantastic job in the first handful of laps.
Peterson looking like he might want to try and threaten on Yarnay here, so let's see whether or not he attempts something into the outer loop once again as they fly down the back stretch. He's not poking his nose out, so if he's got the momentum, he's not interested in using it, which isn't too shocking since the Rafa Racing Club cars are teammates and are probably wanting to work together. That's the second time we've seen smoke coming back out of the back of Herlock Bow, but it stops from here.
You know what it is, Joe? I think that they maybe are just trying to lose a little bit of weight. Maybe they just overfilled it with water. Just get that thing out of there, you know?
It is a bit strange, though, that we've only seen it on the back straightaway, so I don't know what's going on. We'll see what we can find out on that one. And Siemenchich did actually fall down a spot. Peterson has now overtaken him, and Jesper is into P2. But look at what that did to Gardner. The gap is a little bigger than what they had before.
So between the two Firebirds, I was noticing that the number 917, who's in second place right now, the one without the headlights turned on, was just a little bit cleaner on the driving line throughout the entirety of the course. Every driver races a little bit differently. Sometimes they like having somebody right in front. Some of them don't mind having somebody fill the mirrors, but everybody's a little bit different. And now that Peterson has got that cleaner air, I wonder if he can go up and challenge our leader.
Johnson here chasing on Bavenbeck for the 8th position. This is through the penultimate turn. The 18 still giving chase through the final couple corners here. Is the 66 doing the best he can to hold him back. I think it says 66 on the car, but officially it looks like he's being scored as the number 11 currently, so that's not going to get confusing throughout this race. Down in the braking of turn 1, both of them trying to get it tucked in to that crucial first apex.
And it is incredibly important. I think turn 1 is probably the most important corner on this entire circuit because it feeds you up the hill. This entire front straightaway, call it, up through turn number 4 at the top of the S's. And then it's just the slipstream game. So the better you got out of turn 1, the more top speed you're going to have right here. And it certainly looks like this number 18 is going to be overtaking for second place. So move Johnson up into second place with the AMs. It looks like the 66 is going to try to do the over-under, but it's just not going to work.
He got side by side, but he eventually had to give it up as they come down into the chute. It switches back once again. Yeah, he thought about it once more, but nothing doing there. Herlock Bow is the one that he's trying to chase, is Bavenbeck. Well, and Johnson too, because they are both AM drivers. And Herlock Bow is our current AM leader up in that number 70 machine. Now, Kirsten is not. He is a pro driver, so that's not for points paying positions, although I'm sure the overall is still valuable to Kirsten.
I think when we talk about drivers and driver ratings, it doesn't matter if you're in the pro or the AM. All that matters is that you're on the same playground and having fun, and everybody wants to win when you're out there. As we see this number 52, the pink Cuda here is going to be moving, Dodge, moving their way up into 11th place.
She's 11th overall, but I believe she is 5th in class and had a pretty good run last time out at Portland. I'm going to try and see if she can do that on the other coast here. That 52 really sliding up towards the wall. Kirsten still doesn't want to give this up because despite it not being for a points paying position, it looks like Nicholas would prefer to be the leading car of this duo.
I was just talking about it. Everybody is a little bit different. As some people like to have a car in front to kind of give them a reference on how they're driving. Some drivers just want a clean windshield in front so that way they can drive the racetrack exactly how they want with no obstructions in front of them. Everybody's just a little bit different, and quite honestly, we're kind of settling into the heart of the race out here, so these drivers definitely going to be getting into their regular pace for sure.
Just in front of them, is that Celadon and Wright maybe fighting for 4th? That would be 2 of our pros. Looks like Celadon has got Wright on the defensive, who goes way wide coming off of the toe of the boot, but the wider exit meant that he's got more momentum carried. Look at how he's stretched away from the 4.
This is very impressive out of the number 4, in my opinion, Joe, because remember, he was held up. It was Matt Wright that got through that group of Ford Mustangs a little bit quicker than that green number 4, but even though that the orange Cuda was able to kind of escape maybe for a couple laps, this green Dodge looks really, really good.
Definitely looks like he's becoming a threat here. Let's see what he can do with it as they approach the final turn. Shows his nose just a little bit. Doesn't actually go for the move. Keeps it much more shallow, tighter down to the inside. That does get him slightly closer to that orange Barracuda, but not close enough. They'll break for turn 1 once again as they both set up to try and get the throttle down. Whoa, and the tail kicks out for that 4 car. He's trying.
And there at the exit of turn number 1, you see how big that curb is. If you get on the, call it the back half of it, it actually falls away from the racing line, the racetrack, and You saw what it did to that orange CUDA there. It just kind of kicked it out sideways, but this is the battle of the top speeds. We know both of these cars have tremendous top-end speed. It certainly seems like this Dodge Challenger might have a few more miles an hour, has a big lockup going into turn 5, is able to keep the nose all the way down on those curbs. Matt Wright leaves them plenty of room, and now they're going to be battling down into turn 6. Move Celadon up into 4th.
Wonder if Wright's going to be ruined, giving him as much room as he did. But self-preservation may be a bit of the key here in this race, is what we've seen. The cars look to be quite the handful at this circuit. That heavy braking down into the carousel will certainly test the cars over the course of the race. And this is interesting. We haven't checked in on this in a while here, Joey, but it looks like second and third have absolutely lost Gardner.
Well, and not only that, but the battle we were just watching is actually closing in on these two Firebirds. So I wonder with how close they were to Reese, if they got on the radio and said, you know what, we're going to do an alternate strategy, and maybe they're doing a little bit of fuel save here, or maybe just flat out that CUDA, that green and gold number 94, is finally flexing that muscle.
I think he certainly seemed to have a little bit extra there. We'd have to kind of check the lap times to see if it was him picking it up or these guys losing some pace, whether it is intentional or not. But as we head up the hill once again through the S's, I'm sure it's difficult to try and keep these things throttled down through here, considering how much power they have. And still, Peterson leads Siemenchich. Now, Jerne, we have to remember, is our current points leader, and by a pretty big margin. I believe it is 26 points, or actually might even be 36 points. No, excuse me, it is 26 points, the difference between them, whereas it is 20 points for a win. So theoretically, Jerne could claim the championship today, depending on where his rivals finish.
We have this awesome side-by-side as we get onboards from Siemenchich, as well as the TV cameras, and it allowed me to pick up on something that I'm seeing out of this number 17. He is fuel saving behind Peterson. It might not be on every straightaway, but on the straightaway up into turn number 5, the main straightaway up towards the outer loop, closed in the slipstream. Once he got there, he simply lifted off the gas and coasted behind the teammate. I wonder if that strategy card is in fact already being played.
Interesting. So trying to be the more efficient of the two and see if it will maybe allow him to jump a little bit later in the race. And you know, I wonder how much of that is tied into them swapping places like they did. Was that intentional so that Siemenchich could be the one to kind of take advantage of that slipstream to help him in the fuel saving?
I think if we're looking at the points battle, yes, 100%, absolutely. We're just going to wait and see. It could also be that the first stint, it's going to be Peterson pulling Siemenchich along. Could just be that the second stint that they flip-flop. You know, they've all got a plan out there, and just have to wait and see how it goes. And I'm checking the lap times right now because I was really curious about those Firebirds versus this green Dodge Challenger. It seems like those Rafa Racing Club cars have picked it up, a 59.8 last time around. Celadon here, a 2-minute .1. There was a few laps that this green Dodge was closing it in, but they look pretty dang even on pace.
Big look up to the inside. Question is, can he get it done? This is where he lost the spot before, and the answer is going to be no, at least for now. The orange number 49 can't quite outbrake his rival. The Barracuda just follows in the tire tracks down the hill. We keep mentioning that Rafa Racing Club cars. We got a car off actually coming through the chutes. Trying to make out who that is that they just went by. It may have been Starzov's.
Yeah, either that or it might have even been Steph Herman's back there, but thankfully didn't get in the way of the leader. Yeah, in fact, it was that 503 car of Steph Herman's just A little bit of an off down there at turn number 6. It is downhill. It's incredibly easy to miss your brake marker, and a couple putting some of the lead cars right on the inside. I think they had a lot dealing with out there.
Yeah, so don't blame him for trying to leap out of the way. Didn't want to be a part of that fight. To my point earlier, the Rafa Racing Club, I've got to spend some time talking with Rafa Martinez and the way he runs his racing teams. Would love to see him hop on the sim here with these guys and maybe give these a go. He loves his racing, and I could see him having an absolute fantastic time competing in this series.
We always love to see the sim to reality, but we also love getting those real world guys here in the sim, and I agree with you. I think that it would be super cool to have Rafa come and race. The other one, one of Rafa's prime drivers, Cameron Lawrence. It'd be awesome to have Cam Lawrence come out and do some stuff. He's on the sim quite a bit, always prepping to go and compete with the Rafa Racing Club and whatnot, so I think it would be great to have that pair come and participate here. It'd be super neat.
Right on board with Celadon, just ahead of Wright. Wright once again going to show himself coming down to the braking. And while it seems like David was able to kind of shake Matt Wright out of that position by braking late enough. Oh, the car is just about out of control coming down the hill. But yeah, it worked for David to try and shake his rival, but Matt trying to use that same move on him has done nothing to kind of deter him off the racing line.
They're both sliding the car around quite a bit. I was going to say that maybe Celadon in this green number 4 is abusing the tires a little bit more, but then I look at Matt Wright right behind him in that orange 49, and he's just as sideways as the Dodge right in front of him. So I think both of these drivers locked in a really intense battle and might not be looking at the big picture. I'm also seeing the brake rotors glowing. Both of them having some fun.
Well, we'll see if the psychological game works back, but and I think Matt Wright had a little bit of a bigger slip up there, had to definitely get off of it, falls off the back of Celadon for a brief moment. Back to our Rafa Racing Club cars, still running line astern. It is looking like a flying formation situation for these two, not really challenged one another, and don't seem to be too fussed about Gardner continuing to pull away. I feel like your observation a little bit earlier about his fuel saving, about Siemenschic's fuel saving, Joey, I feel like that's kind of putting the pieces of the puzzle together. I think this is very purposeful what they're doing, allowing him to kind of run away.
Agreed. And I think that Reese actually sees it, and he's responding as he should. His last lap time of 59.1. That is less than a quarter of a second, less than 0.2 of a second off of his fastest lap all race long. So if he sees those two cars go into fuel save and says, all right, they're dropping back a little bit, they're going to try to play this game where they can go a little bit longer, fill up a little bit less time in the pits, well, he's just going to go as fast as he possibly can and extend that gap as much as possible. So hopefully he's just so far off in the distance it doesn't even matter anymore.
So are you telling me that essentially you can't straddle the fence? You either kind of got to go from commit to one strategy or the other?
True. And I think that the Rafa Racing Club is doing the right thing in starting to fuel save early, because you cannot start to fuel save late. So they are doing the right thing and playing the strategy card early.
Down through the heel of the boot. Celadon still frustrated by, no, he's not still frustrated. He was ahead. So there was an overtake, and Matt Wright has managed to get by at some point, although he might give it up if he keeps letting the car hang out like that up through turn 9. They'll come back through the penultimate corner, and Matt Wright, who initially lost out earlier on, has bumped himself up into P4. Let's see if he can stretch away.
A little bit wide for Peterson in turn number 1. That's way off the racetrack, and thankfully it is paved out there so you can get back on, but you think if you open up the arc like that, you can carry a ton more speed. Trust me, that actually slowed down these two Firebirds. That was a big mistake in one.
I have to pull up my rules here for this one because they had the track limits marked out in that. I need to check to see what exactly is going to happen if you abuse that too often. But definitely, I mean, my goodness, he used it up and then some just to keep himself out of trouble. Question is, was that past what they consider the rules? Is it just one time, or they have multiple opportunities to use that to save themselves before it causes them any woe?
I tell you what, when I was a driver, Joe, you use what's out there until you're told no more. So until somebody gets on the radio and says, hey, you can't do that anymore, the drivers out there, they're going to push the limits.
No doubt about that. And I can tell that he's not afraid of doing so as we check in with Herlock Bow, back down to 7th, but he is still our leader in the AMs. He's got, let's see, about 3 seconds, no, 6.5 seconds over Johnson, who is the next one back in that AM category. So he's sitting pretty here. In fact, our camera shots aren't showing anybody even within visible distance.
However, the last few laps, Mark Johnson has been faster than Herlock Bow here. The lead was up to about 8.5 seconds in AM. But this car right here, this number 18, this Ford Mustang, has been reeling it in, and not a whole ton of lap, but about 0.3, maybe half a second a lap. And he's closed it down from about 8.5 seconds now to about 6.5 seconds or so, maybe actually just under 6 seconds. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it as the race develops.
So I've got the rules pulled up. The official wording is the track limits are enforced by the in-game system. Should a car go off track and gain a significant advantage or position, a driver gaining a disadvantage from that action has the right to protest that after the race has completed. So you might not know that you have gone over what is acceptable until after this one is over.
I also think it goes back to what I had mentioned. I don't think that it was a time advantage gain, especially since it was a mistake in one. I can tell you for sure his teammate behind him is not going to protest him for going off in one, so that might kind of throw that out the window. But turn one is just so tricky. You look at all that pavement and you say, I could go hauling through there, but just with how bumpy the apex curb is, how bumpy the exit curb is, you actually don't gain time going that wide.
Yeah, not typically we see drivers get a much better run unless it's a lower powered car. These higher powered machines definitely kind of need to square it up properly to get the best out of it. This is Ryan back in 14th. I think one of the closest battles we've got besides second and third place, which hasn't really technically been a battle. So this is for P13 with about 1.5 seconds to make up as we check in with the Mustang of that number 29.
This is Mike Mallon. It's just kind of all three cars evenly spaced right here between Ryan Mallon and I believe Purchase is just in front. He's that green number 7 just right here in front of this white number 29. So all three of these cars running a very similar pace. Mike Mallon's last lap time a 2:03.9. Compare that to Purchase right in front of him, which was a 2:02.6. Gerard Ryan also with a 2:02.5. So it might actually be that those three cars start to kind of close it up and compress in on each other.
Let's jump a little bit farther back to Gordon now, chasing Marazzi. This is even closer, 0.3 seconds. The 88 slipping it out to the rumble strips here. Oh, and he gets into the back of him. He misjudges his braking. The 77 slides trying to save the car, but it looks like Marazzi is hard into the wall.
Was that all in front of our leader?
It was.
This is Reese Gardner coming through, and he has got to be looking up to the racing gods right now and saying, what have I done? Because every single race, there's literal cars being thrown at him.
And we're not even that far into this one. I mean, let's hope for his sake that that's all of his bad luck out of the way now, and he can relax a little bit more. But you're right. I didn't even catch that until you said something that is Reese Gardner hoping that everybody clears by the time he is through. And that's why you saw the 88 leaping out of the way for him.
I know that I'm making a little bit of a joke out of it, but if people haven't seen the rest of the season, there's been multiple races that Reese has had one of the fastest cars and just been kind of cleaned out of the race. And some of them have been racing incidents, some of them have been unfortunate, but I think Reese might have gotten away with one early on here. Getting lucky.
Let's take another look at what happened. This is focusing on Reese now, so he can see it all happening. And he, to his credit, he had plenty of time to react. You can see him locking up the brakes a bit, trying to stay out of everybody's way. And eventually, once they flew into the tires, all he had to do was just overtake the 88, who definitely didn't want to hold him up too much and let him by.
It was a perfect play-by-play. He wanted to stay as far away from those cars on driver's right as possible. As we check back in on these Firebirds, it looks like Siemenchich might actually be done with his fuel save and say, you know what, I want to go turn some laps in front of my teammate in the 917. So they simply swap positions on the front straightaway there, and now it's the 17 to go chase down Reese, who's now extended that gap up to 7.5 seconds despite that little kerfuffle right here.
Yeah, just I don't get the impression that this is a legitimate battle between them. They're getting ready to lap that 88 as well. It tells you how far behind they are, that they're only just now catching that car. But at the same time, they're 11 seconds ahead of Matt Wright, the next car down in 4th position. So the pace has actually been pretty darn quick at the front of the field. It's just the leader, Reese Gardner, has got so much speed underneath him that he makes even these quick drivers look like they are struggling. Speaking of which, the 88 thankfully does not run into them. I guess he is the scare for these two now.
And I think you saw the number 17 car make a really, really late dive into turn number 9 because he just wasn't sure where Chris Gordon was going to end up after he kind of came back out on the track. But I don't think it affected those Firebirds too much out there. As we check back in on this battle for what is 13th place, Gerard Ryan still chasing Mike Mallon and David Purchase. I thought that this 3-car pack was going to close itself up a little bit, but it seems to be kind of staying stagnant. If anything, the 55 is closing it in here on this white Mustang a little.
Yeah, and Ryan's in one of the lesser seen cars in this series. This is the Camaro that he is racing. Only other driver to be in that car this race is Declan Brush. And that looked like a relatively easy pass, actually. Ryan moving into 13th now.
Up the slight crest here out of turn number 9. This is always the trickiest corner to me because you come up the hill over the crest. It's relatively slow, so you really have to be patient, and all you want to do is put that right foot to the floor, and just seems like you're crawling through that corner, and there's never sort of any grip.
You know, I felt a lot better after last weekend. We had Alex Sedgwick, very talented Carrera Cup driver, in with us, and I expressed during one of the races how I'd always found in the sims that turn 9 to just be diabolical. I never feel like I can get it right. And he came back with a simple same. Yep. Okay. Yeah, well, if a professional driver is also struggling with it, then I feel a little better now.
I mean, let's get nerdy with it here. I mean, we're on lap 18 of 75 over here. So at turn 9, when we get back up to it, we'll get the visual shots, you know. But it is coming up the hill, so you brake going uphill. Everything's all good there. In fact, you've got a little bit of extra brake going up the hill. But then as soon as you turn in, it crests, it plateaus. So you lose all grip in the front end of the car, right? So you've got great braking grip, and then all of a sudden it disappears. You're no longer braking and you're no longer turning. So you better have the car slowed down to a proper speed. Otherwise, you're just going to fly straight over into the tires. And then finally, once the car grips back up top, you put your foot down and the car's still actually light, and you got so much wheel into it, it's really loose coming out of it. There's just a lot going on turn 9, especially for how slow it really is.
It feels very clumsy, that is for sure. Chich back into second, has not been able to run away. Is this them swapping around and now giving Pedersen the opportunity to fuel save for a few laps? Is this a leapfrog game, actually, that we're watching?
It could be. If they are, in fact, playing the fuel save game, what they might have done is half the fuel stint have one car lead. The other half of the fuel stint have the other car lead. I will say that's not the most efficient way to do it. I would just give all of the goodies to one car versus trying to split them between the two, because it's kind of like trying to split one candy bar. Which is better? Are you going to give it to one of your teammates, or are you just going to kind of both be a little satisfied?
That's a good point. We'll see whether or not that works out for them. Reese Gardner's extended it up to about 7.5 seconds at this stage. I don't think there's even enough points for him to be in the title hunt now. Let me check and see what he's got. 27 points. Yeah, no, he's not going to be able to get there, because Simoncic at 70 points is more than 40 points ahead of him. I believe it is only Wright, Brown, and McGregor that are within mathematical distance, and even that is a pretty far hope for those three trying to catch up to the Rafa Racing Club drivers. So Reese probably not even thinking championship here. He's thinking this race, this sole race, I want another checkered flag in my hands.
I've been watching just kind of the attitude of how he's driving. I mentioned it the last time we were out, how smooth he is. We've been watching the bigger cars like Matt Wright and Celadon back there in the big old Dodge, and they're sliding the cars everywhere. And yes, this green and gold number 94 is sliding a little bit. You can see it yawed out, but it does not have huge amounts of countersteer. It's not laying down the treads on the racetrack. In fact, I think the only tread I've seen out of this 94 was that lockup trying to avoid that accident in front of him.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. Granted, we haven't turned the cameras to him frequently, but every time we have, it's been that same story once again. The car just under excellent control. His fellow Aussie, Matt Wright, still unable to catch the podium drivers. 12.4 seconds back from them, but doing his own thing in his Barracuda and just laying down the laps. As we've seen, Joey, you just can't predict what's going to happen in these races. So you got to stick with it and definitely try not to lose the car off the corners like that.
It's always going to be the battle, and with the heavier cars, it's more of an issue because there's just so much more weight sliding around. Think of it just like a pendulum. Once you start the weight going in that direction, it's going to keep going that direction. You just have to control it by not going too fast into the corner. Don't start sliding the car too much. And the other thing is tire temperature. The hotter you get the tires, the more difficult it is to cool them back down to the point that you actually need them. So yes, you need yaw angle to turn the car. You just have to modulate it. Too much is not good.
Well, you talked about the track and the temperatures of it. It's pretty hot, if I'm seeing this correctly. 51 Celsius on the surface right now, 123 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not going to help these things. That probably explains why we're seeing so much slipping and sliding.
Very hot. Couple that with just the heavy cars, right? These are not light vehicles. These are not current GT3 cars. They're not current GT4 cars. These are heavy muscle cars, and yeah, put them on a hot track, they're going to slide around quite a bit. And you put them in the draft, we saw a case of it earlier. You get tucked up too much behind a car. The hot temperatures also equal hot engine temperatures. You can get that thing spiked up too hot rather quickly.
Riding on board with the Mustang of Malin. Just trying to see if he can catch back up to Ryan, who we saw make that pass earlier, facilitated by a mistake from Mike. So he's going to try and make up for that, see if he can get back in things. Haven't seen any of our first scheduled stops yet, which could definitely throw the cat amongst the pigeons here and mix things up depending on who pits when and what the tires are going to be like. They'll finish up this latest lap on the main street. No sign of pit stops from these two, at least.
When we talk about pit stops, I'm doing the math right now. Typically, we see a one-stop strategy out of this racing. And so that would mean split it right down the middle. If you can make it to lap 37, you should be able to make it to the end. You know, push it to lap 38 so that way you do the one extra to make sure you can make it the back half of the race. Now, if you're going to do a two-stop strategy, we're looking probably at about lap 25 or so for those cars to be pitting in. So working lap number 21, if there is anybody on a two-stopper, it'll be coming in the next handful of laps.
Exactly. And you got to think that some of these drivers that seem to be pushing hard more likely going to be trying that two-stop strategy. We'll see whether or not that is the case. And just a few laps to go before we'll kind of be enlightened on that one. That's assuming they try and split it up evenly on those stints here. Of course, if the fuel allows, you could always put a little earlier or a little bit later. David Purchase chasing on Mifan Fleur. This is 4P11 right now.
Right in the heart of the AM battle. And just trying to see who can be smoother here around this hot Watkins Glen racetrack. The sprightly tortoise Ford Mustang, definitely a smaller machine than that number 52 Dodge Challenger of Fleur right in front. And looking at the AMs, this is what, a battle for what would be about 4th or 5th place. I guess Fleur is the one in the AM, and David Purchase is actually in the pro category, so kind of throw everything that I said out the window.
I hate when that happens. And you're right, Purchase is not racing for points with Mifan. His next car is going to be Celadon, my goodness, who is well up the road. And as soon as I say that, no, he's not anymore. He is actually in pit lane, taking his first stop. So that will set him backwards somewhat, but on fresh tires, will he start to maybe remake some of that time on Celadon? There he is, back onto the track.
And it's a little bit early if you want to split it evenly into 3. I don't have the hard fuel numbers in front of me. If these cars can, in fact, make it on a one-stop, I wouldn't be worried about stopping maybe a few laps early if you are going to do a two-stop, because the fuel won't be the issue. It's simply limiting that tire wear. I'm sure the driver was not happy with the tires. Come in, get a brand new set, and get back out there with something you're happy with.
Well, and more than that, my experience over the years, Joey, has been if you ask a driver which strategy do they want to go for, the one where they have to putter around to hit a time, or go all out and pit more than once to try and dash to the finish, which one do you think drivers are going to take?
They're going to take the one that's going to win them the race, Joe.
True.
No, but we're watching all these cars hit pit lane, and we didn't even notice Reese Gardner has actually already pitted. So I think that this is as far as the leaders that these cars can actually go, which throws us a very, very interesting strategy loop, because if that's as far as they can make it, they cannot make it on just 2 more. They will have to come in again after that.
Viewers under a certain age should probably be surprised to see cars flying in so quickly to their pit stall. One thing they do that is like real life as well in this series, or real life in this era, is there are no pit speed limits. These cars didn't see those, so you get in as quickly as you can. You try and hit your stall from very high speeds, and then it is foot to the floor, burn some rubber, and get out.
And on that topic, it might be a little bit off topic, but I just saw a video the other day, Joe. IndyCar, I think, only implemented pit lane speeds into the 90s. I saw them hauling in Indianapolis, 200 miles an hour in the 90s.
Yeah, no, it was pretty ridiculous. It's hard to believe it took them that long to implement it. To be fair, F1 did as well. It wasn't until after the infamous Imola 94 race that they finally instituted pit lane speed limits, and Siemenchich here not interested in any sort of limits because that car is really over it. In fact, just about ran into the barrels there on the entry to the pit lane.
I could tell what he was trying to do. You know, he was trying to kind of slingshot around the final corner, but I actually think he might have drove it in a little bit too fast. And the reason why that's important, and you got to note that down. Let's see where Siemenchich actually comes out in comparison to his teammate, who pitted just the lap before and might have actually had a little bit of a cleaner in-lap. Here comes Peterson in that number 917. And I think Siemenchich is actually going to get out in front of him.
You are correct, and by a big margin. That is not Peterson behind him. That is the lapped car of, I think, DeVos.
I wonder if we're seeing a little bit of that fuel save pay off, because it was Siemenchich that was fuel saving behind Peterson in that first stint, and that would mean a shorter time on pit road to fill up the car.
You're right. Wow. Yeah, I mean, that may have paid huge dividends there. Now, this is Nicholas Kirsten, as I was trying to correct myself. That actually isn't a lapped car. That's for position, but off strategy, I'm pretty certain. Kirsten still needs to stop, and judging by the way those tires are treating him through the chute, might need some new rubber, too.
It's all about the net gain. Every single car has a different fuel burn rate, and for the most part, I guess we've seen some of the Boss 302s already come down and hit pit lane. I think we saw Malin come down a little bit earlier, so maybe Kirsten has just been able to fuel save efficiently here in this first stint, but if they can somehow stretch it out another handful of laps, it just opens the door for future strategy to go their way.
All right, Fleur done with her stop. She's back out on the track, and is that Rush just in front? I think it may have been. Celadon just gets a spot from Ryan. Now, I think Ryan also needs to stop, because he shouldn't have been ahead of that green number 4, from what I recall.
I think we just got the shot of him exiting pit lane, though. I could have been wrong, and Celadon in that green number 4 has kind of been falling down the order, because remember, he started out so strong. You had a really, really fast car, but then Matt Wright was able to get back by him, and then after that, he just kind of fell back from that orange Barracuda. So I wonder if Celadon is happier on the fresh set of tires early on in the stint.
Could be. Meanwhile, Bavenbeck is going to come on in for his pit stop. So that'll get him out of the way. I'm almost certain that Ryan has not stopped yet. This is Herlock Bowe, who was our leader in the AM category, and is going to take that back pretty soon, I would think. Bavenbeck was, yeah, there we go. There's Bavenbeck now. So he was our leader temporarily through the pit sequence. He'll get back out and going. Herlock Bowe retakes the lead, although Bavenbeck might be RP2 now that his stop is finished.
You know, and credit where credit is due. I think that we've talked about Reese Gardner and how fast he is on the racetrack, but look at the time gap now. It was about 7 seconds, 7.5 seconds before the pit stop cycle started, and he nailed it in the pits too. It's now up to almost 9.
It's not looking like anybody can touch him at this phase. Celadon takes the car to the inside. This is for position, but not for class position. Bavenbeck doesn't fight it too hard. He lets him go. Celadon sets off to try and catch back up to Wright, who he still has a massive gap to cut down.
Go down the hill, through the chute, into turn number 6. It's always such a tricky little brake zone down the hill. Get the car slowed down. But thankfully, you do have quite a bit of camber in the road there through that turn to help you through. And then, mentioned earlier, drive the car into turn number 7. It starts going up the hill, so you have so much compression on those front tires. It really grips the car up, and thankfully the rear tires just help drive the car through the corner. And now comes the heel of the boot, turn number 8. And this one is actually pretty straightforward, and couple that with the additions of Watkins Glen over the years with the exit runoff, you can kind of do whatever you want in that corner now.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me check to see if they are policing that one, though, for post-race.
I would be surprised if they were, because that is generally, even in real life, it's kind of a non-issue, kind of like a non-called corner. If you're way out there, you're slowing down anyways.
Ironically, the real World Series that I was calling, that was one of only 2 corners they were watching, turn 8 and turn 1. And I can tell you that this series does have it. It says keep 2 tires within the inside of the red line, and that red line goes along the very outside of the curb through that corner. So they've got to, I guess the easy way to think about it is if they have 2 tires on the curb, they're still good.
Look, I was always taught there's a racetrack. Keep your box on the racetrack. There's other boxes out there. Don't hit the other boxes, right? Keep your box inside your own little racetrack. Don't screw up the grass. Don't screw up the wall. You're there. Just have a fun time. Don't make anybody else's day worse.
I think that's a good philosophy to go by. Do no harm. But Gerard Ryan, who comes out on the track, now we can say for sure he has taken his stop, and I think he will return right about where he was battling before, fighting with Malin, although Malin is a lot farther behind. Yeah, if that's right, 20-some seconds, that's massive.
The one that is still intriguing me is our 3rd place. Oh, well, I say that and he just hit pit lane. I was really wondering if this Ford Mustang of Nicholas Kirsten could stretch it all the way to maybe lap 33, 34, something like that, to see a 1-stop, but here he is in on lap number 27.
All right, so the world is back in its right place, and he is going to fall down. Right, Herlock Bow going to take over positions from him. Reese Gardner continues to lead, still at about 9 seconds ahead. But this is a third of the way through this race. If this trend continues, 9 times 3, he'll have about half a minute over the next nearest car by the end of the race. A lot can happen in that time, so there's no guarantees that pace will keep up and he won't make a mistake or get caught up by traffic. Or we could see Siemanchich pick it up and try and run him down. But as it stands right now, the 94 is the one to beat.
I also think that Reese has just been on rails. I think he's really put it together the last half of the season. He's definitely going to be tough to beat out there. As long as he doesn't make any mistakes and other lapped cars, they kind of stay out of the way for him. You're right. I think that it's going to be up to this number 17 if he can actually do something about it. I think that this fuel stint, this second stint here, is actually showing a little bit more promise. Yeah, we made the comment that Reese is still pulling away, but not by as much. And look at the gap between him and his teammate. And I mean, it is drastic now.
And unfortunately, for Matt Wright, Siemanchich finishing in second here is only going to be 5 points difference between himself and Matt Wright in scoring, which is not going to be enough. That would seal the championship for the 17 driver. Peterson not really in this fight as much, just here as moral support, if you will. And the Rafa Racing Club driver, if he winds up this far behind in the end, will still be glad to claim himself a podium. So Yone up at the front of the points, even though he's not the front of the race itself, is still sitting pretty.
We watch this Firebird crest at the top of the hill here. Always one of the more popular spots if you were at Watkins Glen. Go pop out the lawn chair, take the golf cart down here. An action-packed area between the inner loop and the outer loop here. And then it gets to be a little bit more sparse once the cars dive down into the boot section. This is really a completely different area of the racetrack if you are a spectator. You can see some of the spectators off on the right side here, but that's kind of no man's land. You're actually not allowed in there in real life. You're allowed on the outside of the racetrack here on driver's left, where you see all those easy ups are. And actually, Joe, that's where I was standing last time I was at Watkins Glen, as a spotter right there at that TV tower to the left.
Yeah, I discovered that myself, that you can't get into that portion on the inside, which is kind of disappointing me, because I like to try and go to a variety of spots during practice to watch and see how the cars are doing. But still, you can see quite a bit there from that outside portion. And Peterson is going to bring it around to the penultimate turn. This stand right here to your right actually allows you to see quite a bit as well. Was able to kind of hop up in there and watch the cars commit through that left-hander.
You always wonder about road racing circuits if they put the grandstands in the right place. I can tell you at Watkins Glen, they do. Even here on the front straightaway, that grandstand on the left, if you climb all the way up to the top up there, you can see him coming through the final few corners, all the way down into turn 1, all the way up through the S's down here. So, yeah, if anybody wants to go to an actual race at Watkins Glen, I highly urge you to do it. And not only because of the awesome cars and the awesome facility, but they also have some of the best ice cream around.
Interesting. Okay. I wish I had known that.
Seriously, no, the dairy bar at the bottom of the hill in Watkins Glen, extremely well known. Plus all the different mom and pop ice cream places, it's all over the place.
I wish I would have known while I was there. I would have tried some, especially because, well, we have some of the best ice cream in Cincinnati. It's literally been rated nationwide as one of the best. It's a brand called Raiders, but I'd have good comparison. Peterson, though, he's got to cool things off there. Did you see how close he got to the wall?
And it's the time gap has actually opened up even more between himself and his teammate, which was only 9 seconds a couple laps ago. Now 11.5 seconds up to second.
Well, the plot thickens. David Purchase, in the meantime, bringing that number 7 around through the final corner. Purchase is one of the pro drivers, so he's not in the greatest of positions right now. He's got 4 AMs between himself and the next car up, Celadon. I don't even know what the time distance is between himself and that car, but I mean, at this point, unless he has an extreme change in form, not sure that he's really going to be able to catch the next arrival within his class.
Just got to keep on swimming. I know that we've been racing for a while, but technically we're not even at that halfway point. Another handful of laps before we truly reach the downhill portion of the race, if you want to call it. So I think that plenty of time to still make mistakes, and really if you're one of the more consistent drivers, if you just like going out there and getting into a rhythm, this is your time to shine.
It's be fun. Fleur just in front, still trying to catch up. Purchase another one of those Mustang drivers out here. See that a little bit more commonly than a few of the other cars, and it certainly has seemed to have proved itself well. Highest one positioned in that Mustang is Nicholas Kirsten, who came back out in 5th after his eventual pit stop that he finally did. Let's see whether or not David can get close enough to Fleur's Challenger.
We were mentioning the liveries the last time out and how this is very much a 7-Up livery, right? And I didn't even notice it's also the Sprightly Tortoise.
Ah, good catch. I hadn't noticed that myself. He must be very into soft drinks or something.
Lemon lime. Lemon lime is the way to go, apparently.
Yeah, well, let's see whether he can make lemons out of what is now a car in his way, because Fleur has been caught relatively quickly. Purchase seems to have a bit more pace than the Bonwee just in front of him. The question is now that he's caught her, can he pass?
Those are two completely different things, and you think if you're faster, you should just be able to pass a car in front of you. Trust me, it is a very, very different story. All of a sudden, you catch them, you got to deal with dirty air. Maybe not so much in these cars, but it's more the visual cues. When you got a big old muscle car in front of you, and you're used to looking at your brake markers or your apex markers or where to put down the power, now all of a sudden everything's blocked, and you got to be able to learn how to do that kind of based off of peripheral senses, or just know the racetrack really, really well.
Early turning for Fleur. Looked a little bit out of shape coming down into the braking, but she'll hold on to it, letting it stretch out wide. Purchase tries to catch up, but it seems like almost that the 52 was the quicker of them down through the outer loop.
So I'm going to look at the last lap time from Fleur. Looks to be a 2:02.5, right behind that David purchased that green Ford Mustang, a 2:01.6. And quite honestly, right in front of Fleur, Declan Brush with a 2:03.1. So the slowest car is actually the furthest forward of this bunch of three. Might have a little bit of action here in a few corners.
This is going to be fun. They are definitely converging, and it seems as though the Camaro of Declan Brush is going to have some company pretty soon of two different manufacturers, each of them sliding off of turn 9. And my goodness, Purchase hanging it out big time out of that left-hander. That's not going to be the fast way, it seems, as he drops a couple car lengths up to the pink Challenger. Up ahead, now back onto the main straight. He tries to make up for the loss.
Check these lap times as they go by. This time, as soon as they update, Declan Brush looks like it's going to be another 2:03.0. Fleur with a 2:02.6. David Purchase with a 2:02.8. So it's kind of that same situation that even though Purchase, that green Mustang, was the fastest car of the three, once he crawls up behind another car, it's just you got to use those senses, got to use your racing instinct a little bit to keep making up that ground.
Something we haven't mentioned, Paul Starzov also DNF'd some time ago. Not sure what caused that, but the 77 machine is officially out of this race. Down to 18 drivers left to try and complete it. Declan Brush breaking into the left-hander of the chute and leaving a little bit of tire marks around the outside as he tests the limits of this machine. We're going to watch from on board, seeing whether or not that pink Challenger gets any closer.
I gotta wonder how many times the teams that ran these Camaros replaced those exhaust pipes hanging out underneath the car. It looks so cool if you're watching Declan Brush and you see something red underneath the car. That's actually the exhaust pipes going straight from the center out to the exit right in front of the rear wheel, but they hang so low, and with how softly sprung these cars are, I would assume that they get dented up pretty good. I'm sure that those drivers knew exactly when they were hitting them over the curves.
Well, the other thing I wonder is the exhaust is going to put out a fair bit of heat. With it going directly onto the rear tires, what did that do to the car in real life over the course of a stint?
Yes, I think that when the air is moving by at that rate, I don't think it's necessarily an issue. However, if you were sitting on pit road or cruising around at paddock temperature or paddock speeds, yeah, totally, that's a completely valid point. And I also think that's why we see side exit stuff so far forward nowadays or behind the rear tire.
Exactly. And credit to Declan, he's not been caught. It looked like he was getting caught before. I think he's responded now, and they have not reeled him in nearly as quickly these last couple laps. The big American TTS team has got itself a bit of a buffer now at this stage, so we're going to step away and check out Celadon, who currently looks to be chasing on Herlock Bow. Now, this is another one that is two different classes fighting for overall position.
I think that Celadon put himself in a little bit of a hole early on. The green Dodge here has been one of the faster cars. Remember, he was battling with Matt Wright for what was 4th place, but early in the race, he was one of the very, very first cars to come down and hit pit road. I want to say it was like lap 21 or something like that. So I think that really shuffled him far back in the field in terms of the pit stop order, and now he's just trying to climb himself out of that position.
Yeah, I think you're right. He was among the first to dip in, and it did not seem to help. Could have been some of the traffic, since he kind of came out into the rest of the field and had a harder time managing to overtake them. Herlock, oh, wow, that car is sliding up through the S's, is the number 4. Herlock Bow sees him in the mirror. He goes to the inside. Now, is he legitimately trying to defend, or is he trying to let him through? They're going to come up to the lap traffic. He is defending. The 70 will keep him at bay, at least this time.
have to navigate that lap car like you were saying. And I believe that's the car that's been off in front of the leaders maybe a couple times. That's the number 88 a little bit further down the order here. So, big time slide from that number 70 all the way through turn 6. That looked pretty dang cool.
I get the sense that Daniel is starting to feel some of that pressure. We've seen him just slip and slide here and there, allowing the bright green number 4 to come on the attack once again. And that 70 will try and hold him off down to the apex. Let's see if the 4 can get there first, or will he outbrake himself? He goes deep and has to slot back in line.
That short shoot little straightaway between 7 and 8, it can get a good head of steam, but if you don't get on the brakes early enough, you saw what happened to Celadon. Had a good charge going, but then had to give it all up around the outside of the corner. And I will say this number 88 of Chris Gordon, who's a lap down, he's doing a good job staying on the racetrack and staying consistent, but I think that the 70 and the 4 probably want him in the mirror rather than out the windshield.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he's holding them up, at least at this stage, but eventually they're going to probably catch up to the rear of him fully, and then they'll need him to try and give ways. I wonder if that would hurt the exit there of that number 70, but I think he exited pretty decently. As we watch on board with the 4, Burlock Bow now gaining once again on the laps, number 88 of Gordon. Is he going to show himself and also play defense in the same breath? And the car starting to smoke once again. He'll eventually pop back out. We're hearing information that may be because of the slipstream of the car ahead denying that car enough cooling, and that's why we saw it earlier when he was following other cars.
The whole point there. Oh, look at the huge slide from the number 70. He's way wide, and now Celadon has a slide himself coming out of turn number 6. I thought that the green number 4 was easily going to be able to overtake for that position, but maybe just the eyes got a little bit too wide. The foot went down a little bit too fast, and now he's going to use the horsepower to try to get by.
Martin Brundle likes to say, ambition over adhesion, unfortunately. Under braking, wiggling down to the inside apex for the number 70. He is absolutely feeling it. The 88 is now fully out of the way of these two, but the way they are fighting, he might actually catch and have to slow up himself. This is looking fierce.
What I'm interested about is this next lap between these two. The previous 2, the number 70 Mustang has had that lapped car in order to be able to draft off of. Reason why I say that, the Dodge, as he hangs onto it through the final corner, has such a good top-end speed. I wonder, without the drafting help now, if this is that time Celadon makes the move up the hill.
He thought about it. He wants to cut back, but he can't get to the bottom in time. So the 70 once again cleverly fending him off. Certainly seems like Celadon has a little bit better speed. He's been trailing him, just holding on those tire tracks for many laps. In fact, we're getting close to that halfway mark of the race now. He's going to want to try and get by, especially if he feels like he's got something for Kirsten, who's the next one in his class, that needs to be his real concern.
I saw something there in turn number 3 that I haven't seen all day long, and Celadon actually had to lift to avoid hitting the wall, and now he's got a terrific run. He's on the wrong side of the racetrack, though, as we go down into turn 6. Is the 70 going to hang on to it? Going full formula drift as he has the last 2 times around turn number 6. Somehow hangs on to the race car and the position.
I thought for sure Celadon finally had that one over with, but it's not the case. The tires are crying. They're screaming for mercy on the 70 car. It just is unable to give way at this stage because that bright green number 4 is trying to attack at nearly every corner. And unfortunately, Burlock Bow cannot relent at this stage. He's got to push. It's
an interesting dynamic, and if you were to ask me, I know that every driver never wants to give up a position, but to me, it's clear that this green number 4 is a little bit faster than the red Mustang here right in front. And when the driver is driving over their head and having these huge power slides, it's actually slowing them down to involve themselves in the battle like this. It is so hard to the ego to actually let a car by, but when you look at the big picture of the race and you want to go as fast as possible, that battling is not helping the cause.
Definitely not. So we jump back to Purchase, and Purchase outbrakes himself. I think he managed to avoid making contact, but he locked him up for quite some feet down into the heel of the boot. They'll carry on. Back to Herlockbo versus Celadon to decide 6th place.
I'm really surprised that the Challenger hasn't had the top speed. I thought for sure once that other Mustang was out of the way that the big old motor is going to be able to drive by that Boss 302. This has been the challenge corner here, right here, down the hill into turn number 6 for Herlockbo. Let's see, not nearly as sideways this time, maybe a little bit slower and calmer this lap.
Calmer, but not out of the woods. Round the outside, the 4 attacks once again into the toe of the boot. Hard to make it stick around there. He'll cut back in. A little bit of a struggle off the corner from the 70. Herlockbo still fins the inside. Tries to make sure that he cannot get to the apex first. That 4, I think once that car gets there, down to the rumble strip before Herlockbo, that's going to be it.
Yeah, I have a feeling if that green 4 can get an apex, if he can get an open door, he is going to throw up the deuces and just simply drive away from this number 70. I mean, he's showing the nose every single corner, which means he's getting held up. But you called it earlier, lapping and getting past, 2 completely different things.
Fleur, I think this is a battle for position with Brush. He dips the tires into the grass, keeps it together. Tries the shallow line. Here we go. This is what we've been saying the 4 needs to do. Get to the inside first. The 70 is not going to be able to over-under that one. And finally, Celadon gets that 6th place he's been working towards.
And a great launch as well off of turn 1. Really squared it up, put the foot down. I don't think that the Mustang is going to have anything up the straightaway here in comparison to that Dodge. So it may have taken a little bit longer than what David wanted, but now he's got a clear windshield and can get back to it.
So we're expecting to see that green machine to just kind of stretch his legs out. Unfortunately, I mean, depending on what Kirsten has, it might be too little too late. It's a massive 25 seconds up ahead. This means that probably our next best battle will be this fight for some of our AM positions here. And Fleur is going to allow the pro car to lap them. So does Declan's. Oh, but Declan's maybe napping a little bit. Gives the car a chance to go by, and Fleur sees an open door. She's going to step through. That puts her up into 10th position.
Look at Brush there. Does he hang on to it? Oh, that was as sideways as you can get up through the S's and still manage to keep the car off of the guardrail. Great job right there to avoid a potentially huge wreck, as I believe it's David Purchase in that green Mustang who's going to take a look, but Brush is going to defend that 11th place position. And I see even more treads coming out of the underside of that Camaro, maybe just as overheated the tires, maybe the driver just a little bit above their head right now, but got the mirror full of a Mustang.
He certainly does. I am kind of impressed that he's still ahead of Purchase. He's all over the back of him, and the car does not look happy for Declan's. Trying everything he can to retain this position. And on top of things, Ryan in behind them. That is also 4 points pain spots. Actually, so yeah, Ryan on Purchase. So Purchase needs to go by. Those are both pro drivers.
Oh, Oh, and Brush wide again coming out of turn number 8. That's going to allow Purchase the outside, the long way around. You can get this done. Can the Camaro edge back up towards the door? It might be a drag race headed towards what is turn number 10. Looks like David Purchase is going to get that position. So Declan Brush, just a lap, a nightmare lap for this 042. Wants to start the next one, hopefully on the right track.
Purchase cashes out and hands the receipt to Declan. He does not want anything to do with this anymore. Ryan is going to see if he can do likewise, but from what we saw, I don't think Declan's is going to give this up easily. Again, that's an AM driver, is Declan Brush. So he's not in a fight except for these the ego for the overall finishing position. And once again, look at that car way off the racing line. Oh my goodness, somehow he gets it pointed back forward.
That all started in 2, like you called. He was just way off the line, and then the pendulum effect of transferring the weight up into turn 3 had a huge oversteer moment. That's 2 laps in a row. That Camaro is just hanging on for dear life. I was also noticing that number 70. Remember, Daniel Herlock-Bowe was locked in that battle with Celadon for so long? Well, a couple laps ago, he actually came down pit road, took his second stop on lap number 38. That is really, really early. That is setting up for sure a 3-stop strategy.
That, interesting. I'm not sure why he would pivot to that at this point. Was he one of our early stoppers last time? So we got a replay as Declan continues to give us excitement. Let's hope we can get back in time if something more happens. Marazzi is 4 laps down now, so I'm going to wager that he had a moment that did not involve him getting away with it. Let's see. This is down into the carousel where the car breaks traction fully sideways into the corner. Now he doesn't head towards the barrier, just a little bit of a knock. Does somebody get into him? Nope, looks like that is it. Just a little bit of a touch, and just takes him some time to get turned around.
You know, to kind of armchair quarterback that one, it almost looked like a little bit of differential lock because of how early it started in the corner. It wasn't like it was a huge slide in entry. It just all of a sudden snapped in a straight line right at the beginning. So that usually tells me if you're trying to downshift and you lock the differential, that it can kind of like put a e-brake on, if you will. And we're also seeing a lot of these leaders now come down pit road, including Reese Gardner. And once again, this is too early of a stop to really make it efficiently on a 2-stop strategy.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of is if they are able to go, you know, halfway through the race. Maybe this was a tire limited race and not a fuel limited race, so they had the ability to do a 1-stop if they wanted. And maybe he's just trying to make this a 2-stopper in a bit of an unconventional way. Either way, it's a bit odd, and we'll have to wait and see if it works out. This, unfortunately, does put him behind Peterson, but Jesper has not pitted yet.
I think that the only thing to worry about if I was Reese Gardner in the strategy, Peterson, a huge lockup as the 94 definitely getting held up. This is a huge team battle that I'm going to mention. Remember, it's Siemenchich on that same Rafa Racing Club that is hunting down Reese Gardner. He was about 11 or 12 seconds back before they came into pit lane. I'm wondering if this 917 can hold up Reese maybe just a few more corners. It might help the cause for his teammate.
It's going to take a lot, though, I have to imagine. Because remember, it was, 9 seconds between them last we looked? It could have even been larger than that before the pit stop. So, I mean, he's going to have to hold them up for quite some time. And again, this comes down to, this illustrates our confusion as to why Reese would want to pit. Because this now does make him vulnerable to these sorts of tactics.
I think that this checks out per the math for Reese, because he came in before my predicted kind of lap 25, so that would put him early again over here. I think the only important thing for Reese is that Siemenchich, who did fuel save on the first stop, came in at the same lap time. So it's not like Siemenchich can go on an alternate strategy. It's still going to come down to the on pace that they are on the track.
This is true. But will he be held up by a car that is on a differing strategy from here? Behind them, that's not for position. Gets a good run, or it could come down to a little bit of car contact and things winding up in the wall. I just saw a big accident at that corner this weekend in real life. It is not pretty. So thankfully, he gets by without incident, but another moment that left the heart of Reese Gardner in his throat.
And thankfully, you know, Reese was able to get by, and I think as a racing driver, you have to have a relatively short memory and just kind of throw that out the window, focus on the next corner, focus on the next lap. He's still got a terrific gap over the closest competitor who's on the same pit stop strategy. So once again, just keep swimming.
Back to Siemenchich now, also on the same strategy as Gardner, but with a good distance between himself and now the once again leader. It's not looking like he's going to be able to give him a fight, at least how things are right now. Gardner being held up by Jesper was about the only hope that this 17 car really realistically had, other than drama happening. And with our drivers getting close to 30 laps left to go here, the writing's looking more and more like it is on the wall at this New York circuit. As we come back to the 18 of Mark Johnson. I haven't checked in on him in some time. He's solidly in the mid-pack, and he's catching up on Bavenbeck. This is actually for the AM lead right now between these two. The 18 chasing the 11. Firebird holds track position. Question is, can he manage to hold on for the remainder of this race? Or are they also on slightly different strategies where he'll be able to fight back a little bit later? Johnson loses control coming out of the heel of the boot. That will cost him a couple car lengths up ahead to Nikolai. And that gives him the breathing space that he needs now. Well, Bavenbeck knows he's got this AM lead. I doubt he wants to lose it at this stage. The Firebird trying to represent for the Pontiac brand, as they are nowhere near the win up in the pro class right now. This is their best opportunity to claim golds on the podium. And as he, slips down into the 90. The car doesn't seem altogether great for this navy blue Firebird. Going to step away from that for a bit. Check out the likes of David Purchase, still battling with Fleur. But the good news for him is that Ryan has been left behind. We thought that maybe he was under threat from the Camaro, but he is nowhere near that number 7 at this stage. Meanwhile, Fleur is not allowing him close enough to try and overtake for overall position. Bonwee still as fierce a competitor as she always is, and she's moved up into 4th in class on top of things. She was running in 5th for much of this race. Sprightly Tortoise Machine having more trouble than I think he wanted on this one. That vintage 7-Up scheme, I feel like a reference potentially to the Jordans from the 90s, but I could be wrong. Not sure if they sponsored Trans Am cars back in this era, and I'm just not remembering or just unaware of it. Here comes Yune. Now Siemenchich, let's see what his laps are like. 58.9 last lap. Reese Gardner 2016. This is an interesting development here. Siemenchich on the same tire strategy, so he should theoretically have the same tires as Gardner, and yet Gardner's not running nearly the same pace. In fact, that last lap, Genisus was the fastest car. Nobody else was breaking 2 minutes that time by. But this is getting very curious. That makes me wonder if Reese is trying to conserve his rubber to the ends and Simoncic is not, or what exactly is going on here between these two? Usually we don't see him outpacing not just our leader, but everybody else by some margin. Clearly on some sort of strategy that is differing from those around him. The fact that he's the only one to be able to break that 2-minute mark. Let's watch and see what happens as they cross the line pretty shortly here. Reese Gardner's going to be the first one. And let's see if he responds, or if he's going to hold around that 201 mark. It looks like he does keep it that 201 mark. Let's see what it looks like. No, excuse me, he did pick it up. It's now a 59.1. So he is going quicker. Simoncic has now hit a 58.9. So still running a little bit quicker, but not nearly the gaps that we were seeing in times last lap around.
I'm going to jump in here, though, because Simoncic, that lap time that you just labeled off, that is only a 1/10 of a second slower than his fastest lap all race long, a 58.8. So that number 17, definitely on the move for sure.
And while you had stepped away briefly, Joey, the thing that you missed is that Gardner was about 3 seconds slower a lap earlier to Simoncic. In fact, Simoncic was the only driver that was able to break 2 minutes during that lap that he did it. So we were trying to figure out if he's running a different strategy, and if he is he now forcing Reese Gardner to kind of match him?
I don't. So when they had their second pit stop, I think they were on the same lap, and if it wasn't the same lap, it would have been maybe 1 lap difference. You compare that to the first pit stop, and I think there was a 2-lap difference, at most 3. I don't think that the number 17 played the right card if he's going to try to put himself on an opposing strategy, a different strategy. I still see it coming down to the time-based, as Simoncic almost turns Matt right there in that orange number 49. So maybe what we saw from the Rafa Racing Club a little bit earlier with Peterson holding up Gardner, this is a little bit of the same medicine going to the number 17.
Exactly. Same teams, just positions are now swapped. But this is also for position. And Matt Wright trying to hold on to P2. As he clanks around turn 1. That was a much better exit for the Firebird. The question is, can he do anything with that speed? Or is the Barracuda going to once again kind of stretch its legs out with that impressive engine on board and run away? I don't think he's running away, but he certainly doesn't look like the Rafa Racing car is close enough to attack.
It's just the same medicine, just flip-flopped around. They're force-feeding it now to these Firebirds and saying, you know what, you're going to be stuck behind this big Plymouth Barracuda for a little bit. And let's look at the lap time, because remember, 58.9 was the previous best, as he's going to get down to the inside of turn number 6. A big lockup from Matt Wright. Then the Cuda is going to allow Simoncic by. I was going to make the point that the previous lap from Simoncic back up to a 2-minute when he was stuck behind that orange Cuda.
And it does look like he's cut down on Gardner, because it was as high as 9 seconds earlier in this race. Matt Wright just picking up some dirt out of the toe of the boot, and it's down to 4.5 seconds compared to earlier in this race. So Simoncic has cut it down a little bit. It's not going to be enough. And my point was that I wondered if Gardner was maybe trying to manage the tires to the end, was just kind of setting his pace. And while he did pit on the same lap, Simoncic maybe was just saying, you know what, I got to just go for it. I can't sit here and manage. I just got to go and see what happens.
Now, I'm going to take one tinfoil hat off and put on my fuel tinfoil hat over here. what if Reese realized he can't make it on that two-stop strategy, realized he's a couple laps short, and is trying to make up for that so he doesn't have to stop that third time? Because that would also make for a slower lap and allow Siemenchich, if he's got the hammer down, to continue to reel him in.
There's so many question marks. Only they know what is happening inside the car, what their absolute strategy is, and what they need to do to make it work as well. So we'll have to sit tight, watch, and see. It's down to 4 seconds now. It's up to 4.5 before. Siemenchich does seem relatively quick here. 59.1 for the number 17, whereas Gardner ran a 2-flat one, so another second quicker for Siemenchich.
Another interesting point that I'm picking up here, and this could just be the discrepancy in the software, but usually when they take tires, we see it pop up here in the pit stop category here on time and scoring. I'm not seeing any actual pit stop for Reese Gardner, so that tells me he hasn't changed tires at all during this race, or potentially not changed tires. That could also be a strategy playing into the favor of the number 17, who's taken 2 new sets of tires already.
And that, I think, speaks to the difference in pace a little bit more, why he is suddenly running him down. Chris Gordon is going to see whether or not he can get by Mallon. This is going to be for 14th place. The 88 looked quick down the back stretch, not quick enough. He's still got a few more car lengths to catch up to his fellow Boss 302. Both of them taking it way out to the outside of the outer loop.
Accelerate down through the compression. I mentioned this is the lowest part of Watkins Glen on the entire circuit. When it rains, it will flood right there before they go up the hill here. The toe of the boot in turn number 7. Rise over this little crest right here. Then it's actually downhill into a pretty bumpy brake zone right here. It looks pretty straightforward, but I think the trickiest part is actually on the brakes, getting the car slowed down, making sure it's in a manner that it likes to be when it wants to turn into the corner.
And these cars have such supple suspension. I wonder if it's eaten up a little bit easier than more modern cars. Chris Gordon letting the tail wag coming out of turn 9. I think he's lost a little touch with Mallon since we first started following this, so maybe overdriving the car slightly there. Back to David Purchase, and Ryan has caught up to him. When did this happen? This has been cut down, I think, from 2, maybe even 3 seconds.
Yeah, that yellow and black Camaro definitely on the charge right now. The last lap of 202.3. David Purchase's last lap of 203.7, so almost 1.5 seconds faster is that yellow and black number 55 Camaro. And you've got to deal with Fleur as well right in front, so not just those 2 greenish cars, but also throw in the pink car as well.
Indeed. Remember, Fleur is for overall position, though not within class with those 2. She doesn't have to elect a battle, but she can if she wants. Johnson, I think, just was in pit lane. Mark finished his, what should be his final stop, and will return to the track, I think, in 9th place. Fleur going to do likewise. She releases these 2 and takes her fuel stop.
I was just going to draw back on a few weeks from the Portland race, and this is eerily similar for the 52. Maybe takes a minute or 2 to get going, but just a great consistent race and really climbs the order throughout the entire thing.
Back up to our leader, still 4.5 seconds once again. He has improved his time. That car behind is the likes of Jarne Siemenchich, just back in the background. He's been popping into it every once in a while, but has been struggling to become a serious threat for Gardner. They've tried a few different things to see if they can shake him loose from his stranglehold on the lead. Nothing's worked yet. It's not over. there has definitely been some dramas with lap traffic already. Will we get more? And that is maybe the miracle that Simoncic is hoping for.
I do love seeing the chess game. I do believe that Simoncic, oh, look at this, side by side. This was the car that you were just talking about. Ryan is going to try to overtake David Purchase here. It's a drag race towards turn number 8. Looks like the Mustang might have a little bit more horsepower up and over the hill, and now into the brake zone. Deep goes the Camaro on the inside. Maybe a little bit of door-to-door contact, and now there's for sure contact on the exit. Purchase still on the inside line defending.
Wow, that ramped up extremely quickly. Purchase doesn't want to give this one up. Gerard Ryan resets, thinking about how he's going to approach this next time. He got rebuffed a little bit aggressively. Is he going to try something different next time, or will he sharpen his elbows and go for shoving his competitor out of the way in return?
Gonna have to try to make it up a little bit in turn 1. Oh, and there's a front left lockup. You know, the front right lockup, not a big deal going into turn number 1, but the front left definitely yanked that car the direction that did not want to go, as needed that run out of turn number 1 to really gain on the straightaway.
Coming up through the S's, climbing the hill. That's not Fleur behind them in that black car, so don't worry, that's not a position they need to worry about. So you got to wonder. Oh, no, I was going to say, do they have to worry about lapping cars? The answer is no, at least for now, at least not the absolute leaders. Gardner's already gone by them.
And I just want to make a point that we had been talking about how Reese might have been slowing up. The last lap time, a 158.920. That is 2/1000ths of a second, 0.002 off of his fastest lap time. So I do think it's a little bit of a strategy game of maybe fuel saving a little bit, giving some of that time back to the number 17, and once he's in a safe area that he thinks he can make it, maybe it's back down to hammer down and go time.
Yeah, you can see the gap that he's increased there up in the tower on the left-hand side. So it seems to be working for him. How about some credit to Kirsten, who we saw go very, very long there on the first stint. Still sitting in third. Pedersen's already taken another stop, but depending on what Nicholas is actually doing here, he's been holding that third place. Another fastest lap, 58.8 flats for Reese Gardner. And in fact, that is 0.02 of a second quicker than the next fastest time by Simoncic, of course.
And you know, crucially, what that green and gold number 94 has done, he has extended this second fuel stint in order to make it on just one more stop. If he can complete this lap, that will leave an even 25 laps for his third and final fuel stint, which is actually a few laps less than what he's doing right now on this one.
Interesting. So Kirsten kind of going contra strategy to those around. Nicholas going to get close to Ryan in front of him, while David Purchase gets another of his stops, which should be the last of the evening. And then on his merry way he goes as he climbs up the hill. David Purchase fell to only 12th with that. Things getting spread out at this stage.
This is the money stop right here. That's why we're seeing all of these drivers come down pit road. The pit window is open from lap 51 and on. So if you have made it to lap 25, you can make it to lap 50. If you've made it on those first two fuel stints, that means you can make it that 25 laps all the way to the end. The cars that are in trouble are the ones that maybe have stopped on lap 21 and then had to stop on lap 40 or 45. Those are going to be the ones that are looking at the fuel right now saying, oh man, I'm in a really bad spot.
Impressively, we have still only lost the two cars that I mentioned earlier, Starzov and Wyans. This track kind of notorious for having the barriers be so close. It can be easy to throw your race away with the high speeds, running you into the powder blue Armco. And Arazzi is still our last runner. He's got our Dory Award. Still about 4 laps down from the lead. But you got to give credit to this Firebird that he's not giving it up. He's sticking with it.
Done a good job in the back half of this race for sure, as climb up through the toe of the boot here. Use some of that elevation and compression that I've talked about all race long. Really just drive the car in. And when I say drive the car into the corner, I physically mean drive it into that uphill, drive it faster than what you think it can grip, and just let physics do its thing.
Gardner coming to lap another machine, this time the number 18 of Johnson, to put him a lap down. You can see on the left-hand side that they've overtaken Brush with Reese Gardner. Again, asking what in the world is going on that I keep having these problems with back markers.
It was just a little bit of miscommunication, but whenever you're the leader, you're always looking to have everything be easy for you. It doesn't always work out that way, and I think that the number 18 was actually trying to let the leader by. It's just that Reese thought he was a little bit too far back to make a huge lunge into that corner, so he stayed on the racing line. All of a sudden, the car was parked in front of him, but he's a good enough driver that he was able to avoid that situation.
Being adaptable and quick on your feet is often a sign of a winner, potential winner, at least in racing. Matt Wright, he returns in about 5th place. So Wright has lost a couple more since we last looked. Jesper Pedersen now the one that is in front of him. Nicholas Kirsten ahead by 11 seconds to the pair of them. Nicholas just kind of running away laughing with this quiet race.
See what Matt Wright can really do here, because it's been Peterson that has fallen through the order, kind of through the middle stages of this race. If you remember those two Rafa Racing Club Firebirds, they were nose to tail playing the draft, playing the fuel saving game in 2nd and 3rd place. And I know that pit stops are still to completely cycle out for the final stop, but I think that Matt Wright has done a terrific job to crawl back. What was it, up to a dozen seconds at one point?
Yeah, it was pretty large. So I'd say credit where credit is due. Kirsten, you just saw on your screen, has pitted in, so there goes that podium finish potentially, as the others will be able to sneak by. Celadon doesn't reach Nicholas within time, and as they exit pit lane, he is going to be there. Meanwhile, what about Matt Wright versus Peterson? Down into the carousel, the 49, making sure that he's got Jesper looking in the mirrors.
That orange CUDA was 0.7 of a second, call it 3/4 of a second faster that last lap time than the Firebird he's chasing. And in the final stages of this race, got to remember, we are in the 3rd and final fuel stint, so these drivers really think of this as kind of the downhill portion of the race. Don't throw it away. You've done so much work already. I know this car is right in front of you, but you're faster. Just be a little bit patient, and the opportunity will arise.
About 25 laps to go, so 1/3 of the race still left for these drivers to complete. On board with Matt Wright now. He's got the Rafa racing car defending at times into some of these corners, trying to keep his rival from sneaking underneath him. The more he does that, the more that's going to make him vulnerable to attack. But at the same time, Joey, he can't just leave that door open.
I think we've seen the strength of the CUDA really come down to the straightaway. But in order to get that top speed on the straightaway, you have to be able to get off of the corner well. Let's see what it's like this time through turn number 1, because Matt is looking to the inside. He's not going to make a lunge in turn number 1. He knows the strength is up at the top of the hill.
Looks to try and square off the exit to use that to his advantage. We'll hop on board. Let's see how much this slipstream is actually worth. Hadn't seen what seems like a lot of slipstream battles or easily drafting by, but look at that. As they pick up speed and head down the backstretch, he is going to be able to get side by side. Unfortunately for him, it's not fully passed quite yet. Can he chop down? He's almost there, but no, there is a car there, and Jesper will deny him once again.
Now I'm curious if this orange CUDA can stay close enough that maybe, but oh, here's a lunge looking down the hill. He thought about it and actually made Peterson go in pretty deep there, had a little bit of a slide on entry, but what I'm most curious about is out of the corner exit of this corner right here. Turn number 7, can the CUDA get the power down this short shoot straightaway and potentially outbrake him into 8?
Oh, he's got a good exit. He's right there. Is he going to dive it in? Oh, that was a move about the same time between the pair of them. Thankfully, they don't make contact. He's going to force the orange Barracuda around the outside. Nothing there in terms of grip. The Rafa Racing Club car still retains that podium position. Can he do so for nearly a full third of this race with the pressure that Matt is putting on him?
Crucially, though, Matt is doing all the right stuff. He's forcing Peterson to go defensive. He's forcing Peterson to use more heat in the tires. He's forcing Peterson to look in the mirrors, and every single one of those items, it's just another variable, and it adds up to this right here. A little bit of a slower car concentrating on somebody in the mirrors. Matt Wright, I doubt he's going to go around the outside and turn number 1 a little bit too deep, but it's all about the exit here. Oh, too loose. He got really wiggly putting the power down.
Until I saw that car slide, I thought he might actually do this. He was holding on tight, but the tires gave way to the top of the hill once again as they get ready to try and set this up down into the inner loop. Looks like Peterson gonna cover all the way to the inside, force him the long way around. Coming up to the braking, he's got a nose ahead, but he's not clear. The 49 can't chop down quite yet. Down through the carousel once again. Thought maybe he would hold that outside line. That would have given him the inside of the chute. No dice, Joey.
Once again, let's just keep an eye coming out at turn number 7. If Matt Wright in that orange car can't keep it right on the bumper here going into this toe corner, you might as well just kind of throw it out the window. Actually had to go a little bit wide because that number 917 checked him up on entry, and I just don't think he's close enough this time around.
You know, we've spent a lot of time on this battle, but this is really the closest fight that we've got right now, especially for the top positions. And it looks like Matt is the closer car. This is the other one that we've got on track. Fleur versus Purchase. Not for class position, unfortunately. Purchase also looking a little bit desperate himself at times, letting the car drift out wide at the toe.
Kind of in the brakes really deep once again is David Purchase, and I can't remember if it was Purchase, if there was another car in that same corner that had a huge lockup and almost went into the back of Fleur a while back, but definitely that number 7 seems like he's confident on the brake pedal as that pink 52 wags the tail.
Oh, down to the inside this time. The Australian gets chopped off at the nose, and Peterson is having none of it. Again, it looked like the job should have been done, but what a stout defense from the 917 up to this point. He's been placing his car absolutely perfectly.
Oh, and just more drafting, posturing going down. I actually like this later move down the straightaway because look at the momentum that CUDA can carry. So maybe it's just a matter of timing the draft right as he almost nudges that 917 in the middle of the outer loop saying, hey, are you sure that you see me here in the mirror? Because if not, I can let you know that I'm actually here.
Both of them sending it down into the corner, leaving tire marks all the way down to the apex. It cost Matt Wright a little more, though. He gives up a car length. I'm sure he'll start to gather that back, though. He seems so much faster than the red and white Firebird in front of him. The Barracuda hunting its prey, trying to see if he can finally get this pass done. and starting to show signs that maybe he's tried a little bit too hard in places.
Through the really tricky turn number 9 coming up here. They've both been pretty neat and tidy through this corner, and yeah, once again, not really an advantage to either one of the cars. I think, if anything, Matt Wright has actually been a little bit more consistent through the boot section, or through the back half of the boot section, and look at that, really nice and tidy through turn number 10. Maybe he's just trying to calm things down as I say that, as a huge power slide through the final corner. I thought that orange 49 was closing the gap, but still having some fun, too.
Yeah, Siemenchich wasn't able to capitalize. Oh, he puts the bumper to him, and that's going to actually spin him out. The 49 gathers it up. He'll keep it pointed forward. Now he's got to chase him back down. Now, for what we saw, I think that should be doable. But interesting, out of the two of them, it was Matt that blinked first.
Yeah, it was tough racing, right? I mean, how many times did we see that 917 close the door on the 49 going into turn number 1 a couple times? So can't say I'm surprised by what I just saw on the previous lap. I don't think it was anything dirty whatsoever. It's just Matt Wright is pushing at 11 tenths to try to make the pass, and Peterson doing a fantastic job at defense.
Siemenchich, his teammate, is about 7 seconds behind Gardner. Reese continues to extend his gap, and the battle with his teammate, both of their teammates really, about 35 seconds behind. I was guessing that the gap would be about 27 seconds down to second place. And while that hasn't seemed to have come true, it is that and then some for the gap third. Let's check back in with Purchase and Fleur. David showing his nose into the chute. Fleur not even paying attention, if anything. She doesn't flinch on the way down through those corners.
If I'm looking for a storyline here with... oh, look at this. Fleur actually way wide through turn number 7. That opens the door for David Purchase and the Ford Mustang. He says, thank you very much. Fleur's going to look towards the inside, realize that made a mistake, and try to just kind of capitalize on a rebound there. But David Purchase says, see you later. I'm going to try to set sail now.
Round through turn 9. He's been waiting a long time to get that one done. Unfortunately for him, Mark Johnson in front is also an AM, and Johnson, am I seeing that correctly? Is it 64 seconds?
Yes. So remember at Portland, Reese lapped up to, I want to say, 3rd place, and he's lapped up to about 7th, 8th place right now. So yeah, these gaps in the middle of the field can definitely get pretty big. I was just going to mention really fast here, between that David Purchase, Mafanui Fleur, Gerard Ryan, Declan Brush, all of those kind of midfield cars. I think the storyline is if they can actually make it to the end on fuel, or if they're going to run out or have to come back in and get a splash.
So far, there's 7 cars left on the lead lap in terms of those gaps we're talking about. And Herlock Bow is the last driver on the lead lap. Also, the only AM now on the lead lap, since he is the leader of that class. Not sure that he's going to be able to hold on until the end. Let's see if I can find how far ahead he is of Reese Gardner.
And that car, Joe, of Herlock Bow, remember, I had made the comment that second stop came really early. He was locked in that battle with Fleur and Ryan at the time, and he was the first one to come down pit road. So I think Herlock Bow, who is our AM leader, might actually be in a big-time trouble spot. Here is Daniel Herlock Bow, the car that I was just talking about. I think, just by my math now, I know that I don't have the actual fuel numbers here directly in front of me, but a 3-stop strategy by the math means you pit at lap 25, and then it means that you pit at lap 50, and then those next 25 laps can get you to the end of the race. And this car right here stopped on about lap 42-ish, which is well shy of just the two-stop strategy in order to make it on one final stop. So even though this car is in the lead in the AM class, they might be in a bad position in terms of being able to make it all the way to the end on this tank of fuel. And if so, they'll have to come down pit road, and that might just hand it over to Bavenbeck, who's in that number 11 car about 18 seconds back. Nowhere on the screen on the racetrack over here. But he's in a prime position that if he's saved enough fuel to potentially get that AM class win. This is Matt Wright. Remember, he had that little bit of an incident in turn number 1 as he was trying to pass Peterson maybe a handful of laps ago, 7 laps ago or so, and sure enough, this CUDA crew number 49 is just a little bit faster than Peterson. The last lap time of 59.4, actually incredibly impressive. I'm looking through all of the laps from all of the cars running, and that orange 49 is actually the fastest car on the racetrack. I think that Siemenchich, actually, hold on 1 second here. Reese Gardner is in pit lane. So I wonder if they were extending that second fuel stint, or if he realized he can't make it anymore and he just said, you know what, the heck with this, I'm going to come down pit lane, get enough fuel that I can make it to the end. And this just kind of goes along with the strategy that I was talking about with the number 70. There's no way that Herlock Bow can make it. And now Reese Gardner, who I thought was good on fuel, finds himself 17 plus seconds behind that number 17 of Siemenchich. Whew, talk about the tables kind of being flipped upside down with the strategy cards being played. This is Bavenbeck here. He's chasing Mark Johnson for what is 8th place position, and this is going to be an AM class battle. Mark Johnson's actually 2nd place in that AM class. Bavenbeck in 3rd, and I'm actually just hearing word that Declan Brush in that Camaro, unfortunately, is having our 3rd DNF of the day, so remove that number 042 out of the picture, as looks like we've got Joe back in the booth, and something very, very interesting has happened while you stepped away really quick. I thought for sure our front 2 leaders were good on fuel, but for some reason, Reese Gardner came in and took a splash, and now he finds himself 18 seconds behind the number 17 car.
Well, and this, feeds back into what we were trying to figure out a little bit earlier. Why was he going so much slower than Siemenchich? And has he responded and discovered, shoot, I can't make it to the end now. I've got to make that splash. And now he's maybe trying to play catch up. It's hard to say. Matt Wright, in the meantime, and he's back before, no, he didn't make that pass earlier. He tried, he got close, and then wound up making a mistake. So he's caught him back up, and let's see if he can make the pass, both of them kicking up the dust at the apex.
This is a terrific run. Look at the huge block. That's a 2nd move down the straightaway. That one might be talked about post-race. And now around the outside, the 49's going to try to hang tough. If he can, this will set him up nicely through the S's. It might not be exactly where he wants to be so close, but there are ways you can do this as a driver to make sure you time the draft right.
Up over the crest, and now cutting back once again as they accelerate down the backstretch. Look at the power unleashed from the Barracuda. Somehow manages to not only pull alongside, he's got a nose slightly ahead, but he can't chop down quite yet. There is a car at the apex. The 917 will once again somehow deny the 49 the position, but it is getting closer and closer. This time he's going to dive down to the inside a little bit late. Both of them slipping and sliding their way through the chutes, and they'll both get out the other side. This has gotten frantic now.
Looks like we're gonna get a replay of what happened to that 042. So this is Declan Brush in this Camaro I had mentioned that he is our third DNF of the day, so he is officially no longer running. Oh, just looks like he missed the brake marker and heavy into the tires.
Well, they always said cigarettes would kill you, and I guess he found that out the hard way. So, Declan Brush, now our latest retirement. Ooh, and Siemenchich also pits. So, Gardner will re-inherit the lead.
So, this worked out miraculously. I don't quite understand and follow with all of my notes I'm taking over here with the fuel stops and whatnot, but Reese Gardner still in the lead, although look at the gap in that. It is halved.
I'm starting to wonder if they're just making this up as they go. It's just, this is the strangest pit strategy I think I have ever seen, and I can't quite make sense of the why of a lot of it. But at least we've got something very straightforward we've been watching for some time. Jesper versus Matt, and this has been perhaps one of the battles of the season. This has been absolutely unbelievable.
And once again, defensive goes the Firebird. I like this run, though, because if you can get like a true slingshot, you might be able to get the position going into the brake zone, but the Firebird hangs tough. I like the move going into turn number 6 that we saw last time, the super late lunge out of the 49. It doesn't actually have to be a pass. He doesn't think about it this time around, but it can force the car in front of you off of the racing line just like that a little bit. And then the over-unders begin, and you can take advantage of the horsepower coming out of turn 7. It's not just one corner that you get the pass done. Oftentimes, it's a setup corner, a few corners ahead of where you can actually make the pass.
Definitely one of those tracks where you got to be thinking ahead here to make it all work. The 49 hasn't gotten it done yet. This is for the podium finish for the pros. Mark Johnson is currently our leader in the AMs for those curious. Bavenbeck has lost that lead now. But Jesper coming off of turn 9 and maybe going to get himself a slight reprieve as the 49 once again loses the grip on the tail of the car briefly.
And as we watch this battle, I can't say that I'm Miss Cleo all the time, but sometimes it does work out. Oh, and here comes Peterson into the pit lane, so free goes the 49. I wonder if Matt Wright is also going to have to hit pit lane, and if so, this is the time that you make it up and make the pass, because if Matt Wright can physically be faster on the racetrack when he comes in and makes his pit stop, if he has to, he should make the pass that way without actually having to force a side-by-side issue.
Yeah, the overcut is going to be the 49's best friend from now. He's got to try and push as hard as he can now that he's got the clear air ahead of him and hope that he can come out in front. That said, if tires go on to Jesper's car, will that counteract it enough? We don't know, as we've heard that some drivers have only taken one set of tires in this race during the pit stops. These 66 doing his best Smokey and the Bandit impression there for a moment.
And this battle has kind of fallen into our lap over here, Joe. So remember, it's been Daniel Herlock-Bowe that's been leading that AM class the whole time, but I had mentioned that he was way off strategy in terms of fuel, and he's really going to be in trouble at the end of the race. And these two are our leaders. So Mark Johnson in the maroon Mustang is the AM class leader, and then right behind is Bavenbeck, and here goes the pit stop strategy. So all of the AM class cars are still going to have to come down pit lane like we're seeing the rest of the lead group.
Take your pick on strategy. I think it's going to be just watch and wait and see. Siemenchich 1.5 seconds behind Gardner. He made up a ton of time in it was the overcut, wasn't it? He pitted afterwards?
Yes, he took advantage. I mean, he made up, I would say, 3 to 4 seconds in the overcut. And now you couple it, you saw our leader directly in front, and he's being held up big time by a lapped car. I do not blame Reese Gardner one bit for being patient with how many things have literally been thrown at him over the last handful of races. So I think you couple maybe a little bit more of a passive attitude, passing lap cars from our leader with an extremely aggressive pit stop strategy out of this Firebird, and look what's happened. We've got a battle up front.
He can see his rival for the first time in many laps now, and has a little bit of lap traffic between them. I think that'll be too much of an issue for the time being. That is trying to make out who that is exactly, but definitely one of our Mustangs a little bit farther down. That might actually be Marazzi in there between them currently as they'll climb the hill, and Siemenchich has got all of 1.3 seconds, and he can just about taste victory. But remember, the championship, as they finish even out right now, would still be Genisus.
I think his focus is purely on collecting a checkered flag today at Watkins Glen, as he's really going to have to set up this pass nicely. You can see why Reese Gardner had such a tough time getting around Marazzi right here in this red Mustang right in front of him. He's got plenty of pace, so as long as Marazzi hits the marks just right, it's going to take a really good run, a really good opportunity in order to get by him. And here Siemenchich is all over the back of him going into one. Definitely going to get held up, and it's going to cost him big time even on exit. It doesn't seem like much as he gets to the inside, but that green and gold 94 definitely pulling away.
We're hearing somewhere in the realm of 3/10 that poor exit. And time is of the essence, we have to remember, because we're up to, looks like about 12, 13 laps to go here. So he can't sit around too long. And, well, I guess that answers that question. That was the car that was smoking that we saw before. As now Reese Gardner gets a little bit of a taste of it, with Gordon kind of holding him up, coming through the carousel.
Thankfully, it was just maybe that one corner right there. So number 88 not affecting him too much. And I'm really curious, what's ahead of these cars? Does Reese have a bunch of clean track in front of him, or is he going to have to deal with more lap traffic? I think if I was Siemenchich, I want more lapped cars, right? Throw everything you can at that number 94 and make him have to go around them, because if he gets out in clean air with a clean windshield, I think we've proven that that number 94 is actually the fastest car today.
Yeah, it certainly has looked like it earlier on in this race. He's finally clear of the lap traffic, goes chasing after that number 94, does the 17. And for those who are really paying attention to the numbers on the screen, you may have noticed that Peterson took the fastest lap of the race at a 58.7, but unfortunately for him, Matt Wright has jumped him and is now 5 seconds ahead of him. So the overcut also working for the 49.
That's right. We didn't get to see how that really wrapped up, because it was Peterson that came in early, or I should say earlier than Wright, that took advantage of that overcut, the same way that Siemenchich was able to close in all that time on Reese Gardner. And now Peterson finds himself actually a handful of seconds behind Matt Wright, although he is setting the fastest laps out of anybody on the racetrack. 58.77, like you were saying.
It's pretty darn quick. First driver to cut below 58.8. Gardner set that a long time ago as well. So I do believe, yeah, track is slightly cooler than it was earlier in the day. Now it's still frighteningly hot out on the surface, but I believe that they're making use of it now that it's giving them a slight reprieve. It's still at 1.6, 1.7 seconds. Gardner making sure that Siemenchich can't do anything to him, even though he's so close he can almost taste it at this point.
I think that the number 17 is doing exactly what he needs to, though. I mean, a 59.5 that last time, it's forcing Reese to have to drive as hard as he can, right? And that's what you need to do. Is the harder you make the leader drive, the more potential mistakes he can do. He's not just kind of sitting back and cruising. So even though they're not necessarily one car length apart, they're both hard at it.
Bavenbeck is our leader once again in the AMs. Herlock Bow is about 9 seconds behind, it appears. So I think Daniel is a little bit too far back this late in the game. But the good news for him is that Mark Johnson, who's the next one on the podium, is a whole 22 seconds behind. So he played the game well enough that he's going to get himself a nice second place. Just could not out-strategize that number 11 machine as we come back to Siemenchich. And this, now it's closer. In fact, I think it was just cut in half.
About 3/4 of a second separating them. I'm really curious because the CUDA has shown its strength on the top end. They were about 0.8 seconds leaving turn number 1 in terms of the gap. I'm curious what it is here at the top of the hill going into the outer loop, and you see it gaining, right? Not a whole lot, but it does still show me that CUDA has the strength on the top end. It's just if this Firebird can close it up through the twisty bits, and if Reese keeps going wide like we just saw there through the outer loop, it might even just help Yerne a little bit more.
We'll have to wait and see. That's kind of been the mantra of this race. There's so many things that we thought we knew and then wind up getting turned on its head a little bit later on. Siemenchich down through the toe of the boot, still holding to just under a second behind Gardner. This is the closest he's been in almost the entire race since the very beginning of it. They've converged back together. That was a big slide, though, from the rear of the 17. It looks like that may have cost him a bit.
Maybe just a little bit on corner exit there. And as we're watching Reese slipping up out of the corner, you know, he's usually Mr. Consistency, but the last half of this race, I've definitely seen that CUDA start to slide around quite a bit more than definitely the beginning half, and that could just mean that he's noticing the pressure in the mirror. He's noticing that Firebird to close it in even more. And what was about 3/4 of a second the prior lap is now down to 0.6 of a second this time by start finish. And as we watch this battle on screen, Joe, I wanted to bring up a really good strategy card being played. Nicholas Kirsten in that 3rd place position. Remember early on, I was like, oh man, I wonder if he can stretch this to potentially make it a one-stop race. But what it's done is it's stretched it to potentially make it a 2-stop race for him versus 3 stops for everybody else. So if that number 3 can hang on without coming back down into pit road another time, he might net gain a few positions and end up on the podium.
Yeah, it's certainly been a fascinating one because we have seen such a strange variety of strategies out there, and Nicholas has pulled off a little bit more of the patient one. Patience might be out the window for Siemenchich, though, here pretty soon. He has finally reached the back of that Barracuda, and we are seeing cracks forming in the armor that is Reese Gardner. Multiple mistakes in recent laps are showing that he is human after all.
If I'm on the radio, if I'm the crew chief of that number 94, I am telling him, hey, the number 17 can't pass you. Like, the car is physically not faster, okay? He can only pass you going into the corner, and in order to make a lunge, he's got to be close enough. So guess what? Take your time going into the corner. Make sure you nail the exit, because if you capitalize on every single corner exit, the 17 can never be close enough on corner entry.
That's a good point. And we saw that with the sort of reverse situation, how, whoa, as he gets too sideways and he loses it. Siemenchich is your new leader, and into the barrels goes Reese Gardner at the pit entry. Unbelievable and uncharacteristic of this green and gold number 94. Now, they have extended the gap so far that Kirsten isn't even close to taking that second place away, but the pit of Reese's stomach has probably just fallen through the floor.
He is not happy with himself. He was just trying to get off of the final corner to pass. I believe that was Bavenbeck, who's our AM class leader. And trust me, Bavenbeck doesn't just have to pull over and let Reese by. So, heartbreak for Reese Gardner, but we can say it was not a car being thrown at him this time.
No, that was all the man in the mirror, unfortunately for him. So Gardner can still definitely bring home an easy second place in these last few laps, down to about 8 left to go for our drivers. So there's still laps to execute. You have to try and hit every apex and hit every turn in. Peterson going to bring it up the hill. Let's take another look at what happened to Reese here. And it seemed like the rear just started to go. So let's watch on board. Let's see if we can tell when this starts.
Purely on throttle.
Yeah.
And honestly, Joe, it looked like a case of pushy loose. I know that sounds silly, but what happens is you've got a big time understeer through the beginning and through the middle, so you've got so much steering wheel cranked into it that when you stand on the gas, you're telling it to turn way too much, and that's exactly what happens.
And that was pretty much all she wrote for him, at least. Gerard Ryan back here in 12th. Mafanwi Fleur is the one up ahead, but Ryan is a pro class car, so again, not a points paying position. This will be for 11th overall. Let's see if he fights hard for that one. From what we've seen of Fleur, she definitely doesn't like to just pull over and let other drivers have it with ease, so I'm pretty sure she's going to make him work for it.
Fleur having another fantastic run, just like what we saw out at Portland just a few weeks ago. And we're going to see if this Belgian turtle, number 55, can get up there a little bit more and start to challenge. The other one that I was noticing that's closing the gap pretty quickly. You remember how Matt Wright actually pulled that overcut strategy on Peterson and kind of ran away, but that is closing down the number 917, now within 2 seconds of that 4th place orange, number 49.
Interesting. So that battle might not be over either. There they fly up the hill, and you can visibly see the gap between them as they head down the back stretch. Is that going to be enough that the Rafa Racing Club car can reel him in and pass him before this is over? Especially considering, again, we had things the other way around before between them, where it was Wright who was trying so hard to get by, use the overcut, and now instead it seems to be Peterson who is gaining the ground.
And quite honestly, I think that they're both questioning right now why they're not battling for a podium position. Why am I battling for 4th place? How did Nicholas Kirsten pull off this strategy in the Ford Mustang Boss 302? And I mean, he's, what, 10 seconds in front of this CUDA. So I think that even though they've got their own battle between themselves, they also have some question marks they want answered after this one.
Yeah, that's the thing that impresses me, is it's not like they came out dead even on this one. Kirsten played that strategy. And Bavenbeck in pit lane. That's going to put Herlock Bo back to the front again. There are more twists and turns than a soap opera in this one. This is one of the most strange races I think I've called at Watkins Glen in my career.
You know what I think it is? You remember those Mad Libs where they would have like a paragraph and then you fill in the words, right? It's like they have the paragraph already written and they're just listening to us say it and then they're filling in new stuff as we go along. And it's maddening.
Did you see Herlock Bo, though, coming through the carousel? The car got very, very sideways. So I wonder if he's also struggling a little bit with the car here at the end of the stint, at the end of the race itself. And this might not be a foregone conclusion. Bavenbeck came out of the pits about 10 seconds behind. So watch this space. If Nikolai has enough that he can sprint up and try and catch him at the end, I mean, who knows the way this thing has been going, that maybe they'll swap around yet again.
Genisus with a big old slide coming out of the boot section. He's going to be coming around looking at about 5 laps remaining here when he crosses the start-finish line, and actually looks like he's got the wick turned up pretty good still, so the attitude inside that race car is all go at the moment.
Yeah, running about 2-minute laps right now, I think, for him. Let's see what it updates to this time by. It takes a second for it usually to give us the new one. And not sure that it's going to, apparently. It's not updating for me unless that 2 flat 2/10 is what he ran this last time by. Gardner with 2 minutes and 3/10 of a second last time by. So we actually lost marginally to the car ahead as Matt Wright is under threat. Jesper is that little bit closer once again. Last time we looked at this, I'd say this was about a second farther apart.
Yes, it definitely was. It was about 2 to 2.2 seconds. Now it's about 1 to 1.2 seconds. We got 5 laps remaining. So I think that this is shaping up to give us a great late race battle. See that CUDA all over the exit curbs, and then both drivers just staying as wide as possible, and that allows the easiest arc into the corner. The less you have to turn the steering wheel, the faster you can go.
See the slight amount of slip angle in these cars as we ride on board with the Rafa Racing Club machine. Now down to 1.2 seconds between the pair of them to decide fourth. Both of them slamming on the brakes. Must be some trouble up ahead here. We got a yellow in sector 2, but that is out of the way now as whatever happened is cleared out. And then we've got another one once again. Somebody must be having some trouble here.
It's kind of a little bit of some flash. Oh, there's a car. Is that a car stopped right here on the outside of the track? Looks like they just hit the tow button. And I believe that was our AM class leader, Daniel Herlock-Bowe, in that number 70 Ford Mustang. Something happened at turn number 7.
My goodness, I don't think even soap operas have this much craziness going on. Bavenbeck back to the front. Herlock-Bowe, the latest out of it. Marazzi will inherit yet another position, maybe barely. He's about 5 laps down from the lead, but I think it was only 4 down from Daniel.
But you know what this does? This promotes Mafanwi Fleur up into a podium position in that AM class.
Well done to the 52. If she holds on to this one to the end. Holding on is going to be a very tall order from Matt Wright. We saw him on the attacking role. He blinked first last time. What about in the reverse? Now that he has to play defense, can he hold on a little tighter?
Oh, huge amounts of understeer, and now he's going to go defensive in turn number 2. The Firebird all over the back. We've seen the CUDA have the stronger top end, but when you don't get the run out of the corner, you don't have the top speed. Couple it with all the sliding around, and that's going to cost him a little bit of time. Things are falling apart in late stages for the CUDAs.
The excitement is off the chart in this fight. It has been back and forth, and now they are practically rubbing one another through one of the quickest corners on the track. Oh, and this time a little bit of a checkup, I think, caused them to come nose to tail. I think Jesper slowed up enough that he doesn't go by, but he definitely gave him a little bit of a center punch.
Oh, and there's another hit. Is that going to turn the 49? That was a few hits just in the span of a couple corners here, and I know you're anxious to get by, but trust me, you can't just run somebody over. You got to find a way around him, and it's clear the 49 is struggling on pace. Now the 917 is going to have the inside. No, the CUDA comes back on the straight line.
Oh, and that barely gave enough overlap that he could keep ahead. Ironically, it is the car of Wright that has the chrome horn on it, but it's being given to him. Instead, cutting underneath much better in the corners, this Pontiac Firebird is anxious to get by.
These two corners to round out the lap are rather sweeping. Do they make a lunge here? And no, he thought about it for sure. And now almost gives him a nudge at the apex there, but coming down the front straightaway, expect this Barracuda to muscle back on driver's left. I think the 917, and now we're getting door banging down the straightaway here. Looks like Peterson's gonna have the inside line, but the 49 expect the top end at the top of the hill.
Does he have enough? That's the question. They're now trying to intimidate one another down these straightaways. If he can get side by side, will he once again show him some elbow? They'll hit the backstretch. And I don't think this 49 is quick enough, or does he need to wait until late? Yes, there it is. Now it's coming to 4. Now he's got that top speed. He's going to blow by around the outside. Can he cut down across him? No. Under braking. The Pontiac deep into the corner, and it's too deep. Matt gets it right back.
That was perfect racecraft from Matt Wright in that 49. I've been waiting for it all race long. Down the straightaway towards the outer loop, he has been forced to driver's left. The car of Peterson has been all the way driver's right. Well, guess what? This time, instead of going to the left side of the racetrack, he forced Peterson to stay so narrow going into the outer loop, it forced him to overshoot the corner.
And it worked a treat. Now, it's not necessarily over. I think we got a replay potentially of the incident that cost us our AM leader. Let's take a look at Hurlock Bow. So this is coming down out of... Oh, and the engine's already smoking. Does the...
Yeah.
I think it blew.
You see the black smoke out the back, too. Usually we've been seeing the overheating, the water temperature white smoke. That's not a good sign.
Used it up a bit too much, so that explains it. And that ends his hopes of trying to claim that class win as he politely pulls it off to the side of the track and retires the car. We saw Reese Gardner lapping him there for a brief moment. Reese still in second, but about 16 and a half seconds behind. Battle is not over to try and decide the 4th position. And Fleur, is she losing? That is for the podium. Fleur's going to try and fight back. This is for AM class honors here. And coming up out of the right-hander, she is on the throttle with the car refusing to cooperate.
Oh, and then here we go, side by side again. This time Matt Wright has the inside with the CUDA. Peterson's going to have to go the long way around. We know the Firebird is good in the corners. Little bit more door banging on the exit here, but Peterson has the shallow, the narrow line going into turn number 6. He should be able to complete the pass.
These two have reached the edge of control. I can't believe that wasn't a wreck coming out of the carousel. Now it is Jesper who has the advantage. Will we see Matt Wright try and fight back? Or now that he's got that clear air, is Peterson just going to scamper away?
I think that the speed is definitely going to go to the Firebird late in the run as we get this awesome side-by-side. So we've got our 4th place battle on the left, and then we've got our AM class battle for 3rd place on our right between Fleur and Malin. And you see Malin actually have a little bit of an overheating issue up the main straightaway here. That pink number 52 going to driver's left. We know it's such a long way around the outer loop. I doubt that Dodge can hang tough out there.
She's trying. Somehow she's still got the inside. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side. Oh, and that's in the pit lane. Something's happened to Jesper.
Out of gas. Peterson's out of gas. Look, he's not moving going into pit lane. He's out of gas. How? How?
Do you really have to ask how in this race? If we don't know, I get the feeling even they don't know what the fuel is supposed to be like in these cars. This is ridiculous. Fleur, in the meantime, was not able to fight back, and it looks like Malin has claimed that podium position in the AMs. But I think we're very close to Siemenchich taking the white flag. He's got about half a lap to go before that.
And here's, there's a problem
Wow.
in the front right. Who is this? I don't see
That's
the number.
Johnson. That was second. That's the
My
AM Class
goodness.
second place car. I think he's trying to limp it home to pit lane, maybe. Well, if he can. He thinks maybe if we can get a tire on this thing, we can finish this race. Siemenchich, watching the drama unfold around him, has 1 lap to go when he reaches the line.
Does he have enough fuel? He's going to stay out on the racetrack, but honestly, if Peterson didn't have enough fuel, everybody in front of him is a question mark.
Well, we know that Peterson was fighting hard, though, and Siemenchich didn't have to do that. He's still hustling it like he has no concerns out here. And as he starts this last lap, it is still a healthy 13 seconds over Gardner.
Up the S's for the final time. Does our lead car have enough fuel to make it around all 11 turns here at Watkins Glen? Don't have to navigate through the inner loop, and really with the amount of gap that he's got, he can pretty much coast it on in from here.
Battle for second once again between these two. Try to decide how the last 2 steps of the podium are going to sit. Mallon versus Fleur. Mike on the outside as they come down the hill into the toe of the boot. They'll get a whole extra lap to fight ahead of our leaders. You can see them just following them down to that section as well. Fleur almost losing control of the car.
Just being aggressive with the throttle pedal, trying to move the car forward, but the tires in the late stages are screaming for any sort of grip they can find, especially with these hot track temperatures. However, it's leading into the strong suit part of the track for that Dodge, the straightaways.
Speaking of the tires crying for help, that was a big slide from the 17. I don't know if he's celebrating or if he's also on the limit here. I mean, look at the car sliding.
I think he's
through the
going
corners.
SVG right now, Joe.
Yeah. Just showing off a little bit. And coming to the end of this race, I don't know if he knew that this was going to work, but it wound up working in the end, and that's all that matters as Siemenchich takes the win as well as unofficially is our champion.
What a race, what a strategy. I didn't see it coming. This man right here, Reese Gardner, is going to finish in second place and probably be the most disappointed guy at the track.
How about Kirsten, though? I don't think that Nicholas is going to be disappointed with this one. Going against the grain as Bavenbeck will also get himself a great win in the AM class, helping him in that championship. Behind him, going to be a good battle to the end between Mallon and Fleur. There is Kirsten across the line to finish the podium for the pros.
And this was that battle that we've been watching between Fleur and Mallon entering the boot section for the last lap here. I will say that Mike Mallon probably has 1 car length more than he's had all race, or I should say the last few laps here. It's going to come up to a mistake if anything happens here in the toe of the boot, turn number 7. A little bit wide, actually, but you saw the wiggle out of Fleur as well. I think it's going to be a little bit far to try to make a lunge.
Unless we get a mistake out of Mallon, we got to watch and see what these last few corners hold. The Mustang does look solid, though. They're really tucking into the apex out of the heel of the boot. Now coming back onto the main circuit. After this one, it's nothing but faster corners, although he slides wide. This might open the door. Fleur knows it. She's going to see if she can get in there. It's tough to pass in these last 2 turns. She can't get the overlap. Does she try and stuff it into the final corner? As defending the inside just a bit, Mike Mallon tries to cover her off, and I think he's got it. Fleur almost throws it away in the final corner. Second for Mike Mafanwi with third.
What a race to close this thing out at Watkins Glen. The rest of the cars are going to be coming across the start-finish line here as we get the results on the screen in just a moment. But, I mean, all of the action was saved for the last 10 to 15 laps. Holy smokes, what an ending!
That was some incredible racing. Like you said, let's go through those results here today. Siemencic is going to find himself with the win of our pro class. Reese Gardner, a disappointing second when it looked like he had the pace today. Kirsten was an impressive third, and Matt Wright had to settle for being off the podium. Now, Jesper Pedersen followed his teammate home in fifth, but still a great support for his teammate as David Celadon finishes sixth and David Purchase in seventh. Ryan was not able to catch him. Gerard takes P8, DeVos ninth, and Wyans was our only pro class DNF today.
Then we also have, I believe, the AM class results, which is going to be Nikolai Bavenbeck. Remember, Hurlock Bow fell out late in the race, so that number 11, your AM class winner. Mike Mallon with a late race charge to finish second there in that number 29. Mafanui Fleur with a great consistent race, really similar to what we saw at Portland just a few weeks ago to round out another podium in that AM class. Chris Gordon finishing fourth, a lap down. Steph Herman's also involved, sixth place here. Filippo Marazzi in seventh, Daniel Hurlock-Bow in eighth, Declan Brush back there, and then Paul Starsovs, one of the DNFs that we had today.
I think we've got Siemencic ready to chat with us after a thrilling race here today. Again, unofficially, should be our champion after that victory. So, Jere, it was confusing for us, honestly, on the pit strategy. Did you have that pit strategy planned out? Because we were surprised every time we saw you guys come into the lane.
Just before the race, I decided, well, the tires are gonna take a big beating and will overheat, so I always need to change the left side tires, but I'm gonna like split it in two, so I'm gonna do like two double stints, but I will just change the left tires all the time, and then the rear tires, the right tires in the like second of the 3 pit stops. And it was quite funny because Reese did exactly the same. It was quite funny.
Well, yeah, and that also kind of threw us for a loop that you two wound up mirroring each other. You two were in an extreme battle there at the end, things so close between you. And yet we saw Reese make the mistake, which we feel seems a bit rare for him. Were you surprised to see him lose it out of the corner?
Well, in lap 1 and 2, when we were with Jesper in his slipstream, he was kind of making a lot of mistakes and seemingly struggling a little bit to find the balance. So I thought that, well, now that I was in his near proximity, he's maybe going to do more mistakes again, and I will have a chance. Because when he was far ahead, he had great pace. It felt like he had, well, unbeatable pace when there were no traffic or mistakes and so on. So in the end, yeah, I was hoping for a little bit of something that will give me some edge, because basically I could not overtake him with slipstream because I lack a lot of horsepower with the Pontiac compared to the Barracuda. So yeah.
Well, with that win as well, from what I can tell, you, I believe, should be our champion for this season. How does it feel to wrap it up with a round to spare?
Yes, indeed. Well, I said during the stream that I'm not really here just for the title, but I'm here to really have good fun and good racing, and but it's still a title, right? So it still means something. It's better to win than not to win overall, and especially with myself being uncertain if I can actually make it to the last round. Let's see. I'll try, but let's see how it turns. But yeah, good to have it kind of finalized in some aspect, but still maybe we will have one last final fun at the start of August.
Well, thank you for giving us such an exciting race out there, and congratulations on the victory and title, sir.
Thank you for the broadcast as well.
No problem. And sounds like we've got our AM winner, Nikolai Bavenbeck, as Joey has caught up with him.
Yeah, Nikolai Bavenbeck, congratulations on the AM class win here at Watkins Glen.
Thank you so much. That was so hard. Holy moly.
Well, talk to us about it, because it kind of fell into your lap with Herlock Bow having a late race incident, but you put yourself in position. You were there at the end. And what was the strategy like, and were you expecting to kind of be promoted there at the end?
I mean, I know that was like a guest driver, I think, so they weren't eligible for points. So I wasn't fully focused on having Bow in front of me, but it was so difficult to do. I was flat out from start to finish, just trying to match Mark Johnson's pace. And some traffic at one point got in there as well, which really made it difficult at points. It was just a really hard race for us. The strategy-wise, I was just going as fast as I could, as long as I could, and then at the first stop, I took left sides only, which is how I got in front of Mark. Then I took all full tyres, managed to stay ahead, and then I took a splash, and that was it, really.
So let me ask you this. Was that pre-planned, or were you just taking the tires on the fly based on what you were feeling through the race?
It was planned to an extent. I didn't lock myself into a strategy as such. I just felt that I could definitely keep the right sides on at the first stop and try and jump Mark. And I knew that was a possibility beforehand, so it's a bit of both, really, for me.
Going forward, the next race, Sonoma, I believe, a completely different style of racetrack than Watkins Glen. How do you feel as a driver and the confidence going in there to back up this performance?
Well, I believe, if I'm entirely correct, I will have also taken the YAM title from Chris Gordon as well, who is the only driver really that could have reached me. But feel free to correct me on that.
Yeah, no, I'm getting word behind the scenes right now that I believe you have clinched that, but not sure completely with the drops.
No, I think we pretty much all had a drop round, like a non-participation round. I certainly know that I have and Chris both have lost out on a round, so it is what it is anyway. The problem here for me really was I didn't have the speed that the Mustangs had. So I could follow behind Mark, but it was difficult to make an overtake. I'm hoping that'll be easier at Sonoma with all the hills and the downhills and the twisties and the turnies, which the Pontiac really likes.
The Pontiac does really like those, and I know that we're just trying to kind of do everything behind the scenes here in terms of our math, and I think that we can say provisionally, yeah, you are the AM Class Championship winner, just with an entire round left, so congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a long season, although it's in time it hasn't been long, but it's been some long races and hard to deliver in all of them, really.
Well, love seeing it out there, and it always is nice when it pays off, and congratulations on the AM Class win today.
Thank you very much.
That was Nikolai Bavenbeck driving that blue Firebird today.
Well, that is going to wrap up our interviews, and we are heading out for the day. But first, Joey, I wanted to ask you, have you ever seen a race quite like that, strategy-wise, before?
No, I have not. I have notes over here that I'm taking constantly with the notepads and writing down all these fuel strategy numbers, trying to figure it out to provide some factual information. But yeah, it was just kind of a who's who in terms of strategy. Roll the dice, and whatever number comes up, that's what you're going to do.
Well, they almost all made it in the end. Some drivers didn't, but we saw some great racing, which is really what we came for. So can't thank you enough for tuning in, as well as the HRSC for coming along and bringing us this great action. Also, thanks to Daniel behind the scenes, as well as Joey. We're going to be back on the 27th of July for Sonoma, the Californian Challenge. That will be fun to watch there at that fantastic track to wrap up, even though it looks like the titles on both the classes are done. But there's still plenty more for the drivers to fight for, and as we've seen, they are ready to fight. But until next time, I'm Joe Peak. Race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.
As well as contact already, the number 3 goes sideways fire into the wall. He's already bounced off the side of the car next to him. I'm not sure if they just wobbled